Shawn Ryan recently received a formal demand letter from attorneys representing Dan Crenshaw, the congressman from here in Texas.
I know Dan. I put Dan through buds.
Really?
Yeah. I haven't spoken with Dan in years, but I know Dan. I consider Shawn to be, I would say he's a friend. We're at least friendly, but just so putting it out there, this is where I view this from in my own personal experience with both of those.
Have you kept track of the escapade of events that have taken place since Charlie Kirk was shot?
Well, before I answer that, this situation is actually, to me, it reinforces what I think about people chasing engagement. I was a little bit shocked by the number of people that were putting out information that I would consider to be demonstrably false, and also, for any level of critical thinking, false. And they were also rushing to make assumptions, which is something that we were taught not to do. Like, I get it, but don't lie to me, right? Now, when it comes to the FBI and Patel, I don't know if we've ever had a more qualified director.
There's been the Matt Bissonette and Rob O'Neill infighting about who's lying and who's telling what. Like,
they're not technically infighting. They basically both just publicly tell a different version of the same story. I can think of things I care less about, but there are a few that I care less about than who killed Osama bin Laden. I'm sorry, I don't care. Tell the fucking truth, and you will avoid almost all of this.
When hunting isn't about hunting at all. Team Dog features comprehensive and customizable meal plans with dry and raw food options to meet your dog's unique nutritional needs, including digestive sensitivities, allergies, or selective eating. Did you know combining 75% dry food with 25% raw food delivers robust, nutrient-dense meals for your dog? Be your dog's hero with Team Dog. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest back to the podcast. It's been a little over 7 years since you were here.
Do you say that for every guest, an honor and a pleasure?
Most.
Have you ever had one that wasn't?
Yeah.
At the end?
For sure I have, yeah. This one's still up for debate, so I'll
it's early. Yeah. We've only been at it for 5 minutes, so.
You were actually one of my very first guests, episode 10 in July of 18. So over 7 years. Retired team guy, world record holder, soft hands, good kisser, author of Drownproof, 8 Life Lessons to Keep Your Head Above Water, which comes out in the spring of 26.
I brought you a copy.
Awesome. Host of Cleared Hot and Change Agents. Now, that's not a like a transitioning sex change kind of vibe show, is it?
I mean, I guess that would be open for the listener to decide.
Have you had anything like that on yet?
Like a shirt? Have I tried it on for size?
No, like the full blown. Like, is that something you guys discussed? Change agents is a big deal.
We haven't yet, and it's not because I wouldn't be open to talking with somebody about that. It just hasn't. The opportunity hasn't come across the radar screen yet.
I know a guy or a girl.
I think he's back to being a guy, right?
I think you should have him on and talk about it.
We have. You're talking about. God damn it,
Chris Beck.
Yes.
He was on the show.
He and I went back and forth over Instagram one time, and he made a snarky comment on I think it was one of my posts on my page. And I am completely open for people having their own opinions, and I responded back very respectfully. And we ended up just kind of going back and forth, and in the end, he was like, sorry, I kind of came off hot, you know what I mean? And I don't want to speak for him or paraphrase, but essentially it was like, I just didn't feel like what you were talking about was getting the attention that it should. I'm like, yeah, no big deal. I do wonder, though.
Folks, just a quick heads up. I do have a Team Dog Patreon tier where I answer questions via video, either just describing the answer to the question or even demonstrating some of it. So go to our Mic Drop Patreon page, check out the Team Dog tier, and I look forward to seeing you in there. Thank you much.
Looking back, because I do believe now the pendulum is going the other direction for him or what his personal beliefs are. It's an interesting for me, and I wish I knew more about the brain and the way humans worked, but what caused that? Yeah. Did he really feel that way? Because let's be really honest here. There are some people who do really feel that way, and there are other people who how they feel will shift with the wind if they feel like they can get some benefit and momentum from what's currently in the vernacular. And maybe it's both.
Yeah.
Maybe it's neither. I don't know, but I'd be open to it.
Yeah. I think it'd be good to have him on. I mean, and to be clear, like I had him on early on also, and I've never had an issue with the guy. So I don't know.
Who hasn't worn panties on target?
Well, I haven't. I don't ever wear them though.
Were you even a team guy?
Yeah. Are we talking like whale tail thong back or what? What are
Thong
you rocking on target?
backwards.
Yeah. Eye patch style.
Beans blasting out each side.
That sounds comfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Andy Stumpf.
Yeah. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
We are not at your house this time.
That's correct.
With your dog that you said I was one of the only people who treated your dog appropriately. I just ignored him and focused with you.
It's mind-blowing how few people will do that.
I get it, but those type, like I have a miniature dachshund.
Yeah.
I basically lay on the floor when I come home and let him lick my face. The type of dogs you work with, I just learned operationally, you're better off ignoring them because I need them to sense that I'm not a hot dog and that I don't get ripped into pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the general problem is everybody, treats everybody's dog like it's their own.
Yeah.
And with those dogs, it's not a good plan. How did you end up with the world's manliest dog?
A miniature dachshund?
Yeah.
Have you ever had one?
I haven't.
They are the coolest dogs ever. I had one previously. I should say my daughter had one previously. When I got divorced, I lost, we'll call it custody of said dog. His name is Chachi. And I was not informed when Chachi was purchased. We were living in San Diego. He was part of a litter where my daughter and my ex-wife were doing horse lessons up in the Ramona area, and they came home with one day. I don't think you get to just take dogs back, so we kept the dog. Wasn't really sure. The coolest personalities, for better or worse. They are stubborn, but space invaders, all up in your business. But then once you get used to it, I mean, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's like a walking cartoon character.
Yeah, and their personalities are all different, and they are super loving, and they're emotional, and you can tell that they're very sensitive.
Yeah.
And, they're easy to travel with.
I think Frenchies are kind of that way, which is an unpopular opinion because they've blown up to the degree with which they're everywhere. But I think, or at least, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, most of them were kind of that way. I think that they've gone down the path of not selective enough breeding, and they've just blown up everywhere.
They have a lot of health issues. I had a
well, I mean, a lot of them do now. Again, I've seen some coming out of Europe that they almost have like a pit bull face. Like it's way less of a brachiophilic challenged face the way that so many of them have now. But like they're bred way more selectively, and I wouldn't say working bred, but they're bred for much more solid health kind of characteristics.
The ones I've been around, I think, were just more bred for the pleasure dog thing, and they all have. The ones I've been around have had breathing issues and then temperature regulation issues.
For sure.
So a narrow sweet spot of where they're comfortable. They're cool. Don't get me wrong. I'll pet the hell out of a Frenchie, but
yeah. I just think, like, again, the cartoon character aspect, they're pretty cool. But I have seen dachshunds. I mean, they're actually fairly popular around like the rural areas here in Texas. A lot.
They
of
served
people
in
have
World
them.
War II. It's not a big deal. Bred to fight lions.
I had a buddy of mine that had one that actually broke its back jumping off a couch. Though, have you seen?
They do that. I forget there's an acronym for the back issues that they can have. We have. As embarrassing as it is to say, little miniature dachshund steps all over the house, up to the bed, up to the couch. He uses them selectively.
Yeah.
If you throw a ball, he's like Superman off.
Yeah.
And my wife's just like, no. I'm like, I can't force him to use the stairs.
Yeah. Could roll it down the stairs.
Yeah. Then he lets it go down the stairs and runs around the stairs and jumps off the couch. I've tried.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess being twice as long as you are tall, it's a dice roll every time. But
they're an amazing breed. People should not sleep on them. They do bark at everything, so use with caution.
Yeah. No, they are cool. What's the last full book that you've read?
I read a book on the way here because I'm interviewing one of the authors, and it was Exit Strategy by Lee and Andrew Child. Andrew Child is going to come to the studio in 2 days, and I've actually always liked the Reacher series stuff. Not as that I'm a devout follower of the series, but it's an easy one for me to pick up at an airport beginning a trip. And because it's such a quick read, I'm actually usually through it by the time I get to where I'm going, or at least on the way home.
Oh, no shit. So it's not like a business exit strategy. It's more of a fiction novel?
100%. So the Reacher series, just like the movies with Tom Cruise, and then I think it's, Alan Richardson or Richson?
Yeah.
It's based off, the character is based off of the series. It started off, I believe Lee Child was writing them Actually, I'm certain Lee Child was writing them by himself. And then Andrew Child, obviously related, joined in, and they're kind of co-writing them now. And who knows, maybe they'll transition to Andrew taking over. But it'll be cool. So they sent me that book, and I read that.
Like it so far?
I finished it on the flight here.
Yeah.
Or on the 2 flights. It's good.
Yeah. What's something you wish you were better at? And you can't say everything.
The problem is, that is legitimately how I feel. I do wish, both personally and professionally, when I look at the things that I do, I don't know where you land on this, but I'm not generally satisfied with
Same exact thing.
Outcome or performance. And I'm not saying that well, sometimes I stand in the mirror and tell myself how much of a piece of crap I am. But I try to limit that negative self-talk, because there is an immense amount of power in the way you talk to yourself. And I've learned that by being overly negative to myself for years and trying to work out of that cycle. But I can't look at a single thing that I do personally, professionally. I could be a better husband for my wife. I could be a better communicator. I could be better at hosting my own podcast. I could be better at jiu-jitsu. Like everything from physically, personally, professionally. I just wish I could be better.
If you were to pick one personally and professionally, what would it be? I mean, I have an idea on the personal side. You probably want to be a better husband/father, which I would put those in the same thing. Not to answer.
I would no. That would be the answer, because if I look at the things, it's so wild now. My kids. We just got back from Costa Rica, and 2 of my 3 kids were able to come with me. And my oldest is 22, and he's already got some wind underneath his wings. And I bet I have him geographically with me in Montana for 12 more months. Yeah. And my daughter is almost done with a vocational welding program. Damn. She's not 18 yet, so she's not going to be able to travel. She thinks that as soon as she graduates, it's like union job, and she's going to leave. She graduates about a month before she turns 18.
Well, welding, she may be right. I mean,
yeah, but who's going to hire a minor welder out of state?
Yeah.
And so, but she gets pumped about this stuff, and I have these conversations with my wife. She'll say, "Why don't you tell her that, why do you let her think those things, or why don't you tell her that that's not how it's going to work?" And my answer is, I don't need to, because life is going to sort itself out, and she's going to talk to some unions or jobs, and one of the things they're going to say is, "How old are you?" And she'll say 17, and they'll say, "Hit us back up when you're 18." So who am I to pop the bubble of her dreams? But it was great to have them with us. I've had all 3 of my kids there on that trip. My wife obviously goes on the trips too. It's a jiu-jitsu related trip, so you should come at some point. It's an amazing place. And the jiu-jitsu there is great, really good gym there. But, I mean, that's the nucleus of what I care about the most in life. So how could you not want to constantly be better at that?
For sure. I'm right there with you. And, it's interesting hearing you talk about your kids as they get to that adult time frame, because similarly mine are in that same age range, just a couple years younger. But to me, I find myself doing the same thing. Like, I could sit here and say this is never going to work, and you have unrealistic expectations or whatever, but it's like, number one, I don't want to make that negative association of dad being the one to tell you like, I'd rather do the opposite.
Yep.
Not, Simon Cowell set them up for failure and tell them they can sing great when they can't. But I also think letting them dream and letting them figure it out on their own is crucial and important as a parent. Being supportive kind of no matter what. Hey, you do whatever you want, and I'm going to help you get there to the best of my ability. And, life will teach you the rest.
It's coming for them, whether we want it to or they want it to or not. I don't need to pile on.
Yeah, you can't protect them from it, that's for sure. I guess professionally, maybe that's the tougher question.
It's tough for me to answer what I do professionally, because it's weird and it constantly reinvents itself. For a long time, I was like, hey, I'm in the teams. And this was long before, at least when I was paying attention to social media or platforms like this. You didn't really have to explain to people, other than at like a cocktail party, if you were to go to them, or a bar. But then after that, I mean, I kind of thought I knew what I was going to do, and then that job didn't work out, and so I had to create like 3 more jobs, and those didn't work out, and then I did pick up doing the podcast. I'm like, okay, but am I a podcaster? I'm like, I don't know. I don't like saying that. And then some public speaking stuff, and then starting the physical business, the coffee shop in Montana. So am I an entrepreneur? I don't like that word for some reason. I don't like what it means. It's just,
you don't feel like it.
It just feels weird coming off the tongue. So I don't know. And then, I wrote a book. Like, am I an author? I'm like, that also sounds super weird. So I struggle to define what it is that I do. sometimes I get a little bit too much emotionally wrapped up in the outcome, which is something that I often and constantly profess to others, to include my kids. You got to separate your emotions from outcome or decision-making process. And I always try to caveat with, that doesn't mean realizing that will make you perfect at it, because I struggle with it as well. I want to be successful, and my metric for success is probably different than most people, but failing sucks, and it's hard not to beat yourself up and again end up in a bathroom stall with a mirror looking at yourself like, hey buddy, let's talk about how much you suck. So, and I have to remind myself, because you do that, you attach the emotions to the outcome, and man, that can be insidious. You can just start digging a hole, and it takes a long time to get out of it. And I've done that, and it sucks, and so I'm trying to do better at that.
When, in trying to pass that lesson on, though, I think there's so much ego and reputation built into everything that you do, but especially when it's your business, or your product or your idea. Not to say that, if you work in an office and have 9 bosses, like an office space, that there isn't still some level of personal attachment to everything that you're working on. But I do think it's different. When your name's on something, it's your podcast, it's your coffee shop, it's your, widget, whatever.
I think that probably depends per person. For me, I'm not a gray area person. I'm very black or white. I'm either into what I'm doing or I'm not, and I'll probably move on. But if I'm into it, it doesn't really matter, I guess, if my name is associated with it. If I'm associated with it, I want it to be as good as possible.
Yeah.
And that actually can create problems too, especially if you're part of a larger team or you don't actually have that much influence or input, but you really want it to be successful. Yeah, that's a real good way to piss people off.
Yeah. Can you share the example of how you learned that the hard way?
Man, what would be a good one? So I'll have to be broad about it, because I don't want to throw other people's names into this. But I have been on a variety of teams in my life, starting, I guess it would be family, right? When you're first super young, before you understand the concept of the team. But most people will get this one, organized sports, right? Which I actually truly believe you can learn almost everything we did in the military through organized sports. It will take a lot longer. And some of the messages and lessons maybe are not as sharp, because it's like, oh, we lost. Whoop-de-doo. It was our 14th soccer game of the weekend, and our parents are actually really glad that we lost, because they just want to go home. Later on in life, post-military, part of a team, we were trying to do something that was pretty cool, but it wasn't my idea to start the goal that we were going towards. I didn't necessarily build the team, and even though in some areas I had more experience than the person who was the founder, I think it got to a place where, and you can talk yourself into this, like, I'm just going to do this without communicating. I'm going to start taking control. And the reality is, I wasn't in the place where I was in control. And so what happens is you fracture personal relationships, because even though the team, in your mind, what you tell yourself is, I'm going to do this for the benefit of the team. But what you're really saying a layer deep is I know more than you, or I have more experience than you, which a lot of the times you do, but learn how to communicate and, work with the team to get these things accomplished. And so it's probably the end result, not irreparable, but fractured some personal relationships for a little bit, because everybody on a team, at least in my experience, generally is coming at it from the place of they want it to be successful. I haven't met a lot of people who join teams with the idea of like, oh yeah, I just wanted to be a part of this team so I could make it fail. That's what I was looking for. That would be weird. I'm sure there's people out there who maybe like that's what tightens their screws. I don't know. I don't think I've met anybody like that, but it's easy to forget that. Maybe when you're outperforming somebody in a core competency that they don't have as much experience, you're like, well, what's up? Why can't you keep up? It's not because they're not trying to, it's they don't have as much experience. If you can't keep that in check, and this has happened in my own personal life, it can fracture personal and professional relationships, and actually your desire to try to take over and do the right thing can diminish performance on that team, which is what happened in that situation. Since then, personal relationships have been recovered, but we're talking years later.
Yeah.
And why do that to yourself?
Is there an area, I guess professionally, where you find that's hardest for you to separate that?
It gets real hard, I think, not only for me, but for most people, when you're in a team, a small unit, and again, you either have the ability to perform at a higher level than many, if not most of the other people, or you have more experience than many, if not most of the other people. I think that is the place where you have to keep it in check the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. If time travel were possible, where and when would you go and why?
I think you asked me this the first time, and I'm going to go with the same answer. And this one sometimes nerds people out. I would go back to a bar in like the 1940s and have a drink with Hitler. We would order a drink. I would choke him to death with my own hands without saying a word to him, and then have 2 drinks because there'd be mine and his.
So rabbit hole time. Where do you think the Earth would be if you had done that? Like, can you even begin to comprehend the
No, because you have to think about everything, because who he was and what he did, the reaction it caused from the world changed the world. And maybe nations working together that wouldn't necessarily have, or alliances being forged, or even logistical pipelines being forged that still exist to this day. If none of those things had happened, I don't think you can actually fathom what removing somebody from that would look like. And of course, like, I would love to do that, because what he did was, I don't have the vocabulary to describe for how horrendous it was. And I would love to literally make eye contact with him as his life slowly slipped away. The emphasis on slowly and painfully, hopefully. But how can you even calculate what the world would look like because of what the world did to counter his influence?
Yeah. Well, and obviously there's the big ticket things that you talked about, but even thinking of something like, you think about how many millions of people that their lives were taken way earlier than they probably would have.
And the
otherwise.
Millions of family members they would have created.
Right,
and,
the offspring, like just the generational shift planetary-wise, that, it's impossible to predict. I am curious, being around him, if you think you would notice, obviously you know what he was capable of, what he did, but if you would actually get that kind of energy from him being around him.
Probably would depend on the setting you were around him. And probably in the phase of the life that you encountered him in. Like when we're talking about the beginning of the Deuce, I think probably pretty clear who the guy was and what he stood for earlier in life. And by no means am I a scholar of Hitler by any stretch. But, I ask myself that about, people in society who end up becoming, like Ted Bundy. You know what I mean? Not to try to make a parallel, but as a kid, could you tell? Well, people are like, hey, man, I think Ted's going to cut people up one day, or, later in life, in his 20s, and I think he got caught in his early 30s or late 20s, like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Or did you only see it when you were a hitchhiker and you got in the car and you're like, oh,
something's off.
I am in the car with a monster, I don't have any of those answers. So I think it would just depend. And it would also, I think, depend on your morals, because I've heard this one a lot too. Well, if you were there in the 40s, not saying this to me, but I've heard that saying to other people, oh, you'd be wearing a gray uniform too. And I don't inherently agree with that, because morals are morals, and I think people can tell the difference between right or wrong. It is easier to go along with the crowd than to go against the stream, trying to swim upstream. But I don't buy this, they didn't realize, they didn't know.
I agree, but I also think it begs the question, which you hear a lot in kind of that same vein of making that parallel, and I'd be curious to get your take on how did it happen then at such a large scale in that country at that time? Like, how was he able to pull that off, do you think? Slowly,
incrementally over time. I think it had a lot to do with the messaging. And again, I am not an educated enough on this to draw parallels between anything in history or anything we're seeing today, because he didn't have the tools that we have today. He didn't have social media. He didn't have the ability to contact and touch people at all times on devices. But, changing people's thoughts on national identity, what it means to be somebody in any country, what that country's role is in the world. I think you do things like that. I don't think that's a trapdoor. I think that, what's the analogy? The boiling a frog in water. You put them in, and it's a degree at a time until you realize you're cooked. Having said that, I feel like a frog, before it gets to boiling, recognizes there's some issues.
That's the thing that's the most surprising for me, is that I can see the slow roll, but there has to come a point for 80% of the population where they'd be like, wait a minute, you know, how did that not happen? And then once it gets to the point where, if you want to call it a point of no return, which I don't think that, especially in an instance like that there really is, that at some point you're not like, wait a minute, what the fuck are we doing?
I think individuals probably did get to that level, and maybe this speaks to it's easier to go along with the crowd than it is to swim upstream, which is a horrible thing to say when you're talking about what the end state was of those policies and what it did to Jewish people. But also, humans are just humans, you know? And so, yet, in the lens of that particular topic, it's horrible, but yet it makes sense in almost any other topic of how things get to that point.
Would you draw the parallel of COVID restrictions? Obviously, there's an enormous disparity between outcomes between World War II and the Holocaust versus a COVID lockdown, but I do see some parallels in terms of the people who are I guess, ensuring that some of these protocols are met, even though they probably don't agree with them or think that they're ridiculous or stupid, but they do them anyway.
Let me ask you this, and it's interesting that you asked that, because I started seeing articles yesterday where the FDA is very likely going to put a black box warning on the COVID vaccine, which is the heaviest warning that they can put on something that was mandated-ish, depending on the community, but let's just say very touted as safe and effective in the way out and through. But this ties into my question. For the lockdowns and the mandates, do you think that it was actually a power play, or do you think that people were trying to do the best thing with limited information?
I think it was some of both. I think there's only a small group of people who were even in the position for it to be a power play, and I do think that it played a role. I think that some of it is kind of the preemptive, almost, I mean, this may seem like a ridiculous comparison, but going into Iraq not long after 9/11 in this preemptive, like, dude, we're not getting caught. Like, even if it's a mistake, I'd rather, go on the offensive than be caught,
Well, there was the large lie of the WMDs as well, so that ties into it too. And honestly, there might be some parallels on COVID there.
Yeah, I think that's the direct comparison. Is that you have a very small group of people who can and probably did use that as a power move. Everybody underneath is like, I don't know, but let's go along with it because, well, I like my job and I'm 2 years from a pension, and
Well, I take it even farther downstream, because I was thinking about this, like a physician who is recommending to patients the COVID vaccine, or maybe not, depending on the physician. I'm sure there are some physicians out there, and actually you hear stories about this sometimes on the crime documentaries that my wife is utterly sick of me watching at dinner time, because to me it's
so you're the one watching them, not her.
Oh, for sure. Even though I know, missing people, not shockingly enough, more often than not, it's women that end up missing. So it makes sense to me they're trying to reverse engineer this and explain why, because most of the time people who take them, by the way, are guys. But the doctors, I don't know any doctors who are intentionally violating the Hippocratic Oath, right? First, do no harm. I don't think that doctors were trying to control people. I don't think that they were trying to push something that they didn't believe in. Now, there's varying degrees of that, because information obviously started coming out, and there are many doctors now who are really open about the pressures that they felt, whether it be from, say, you work at a hospital, right, which are sometimes privately owned, and that pressure came down, or worried that they were going to lose access to billing to insurance, or fill in the blank. So the information came along. Some doctors course corrected, others did not. But I don't want to think that people in our country were doing what they did purely for power. I think they were doing the best they could in the moment, but I think it also showed how fickle people can be in their decision-making process when they're scared.
If you're looking to get stronger, move better, and actually build real-world capability, not influencer nonsense, I launched a new Navy SEAL-style fitness app that gives you workouts built on the training foundation I used in the teams and as a BUDS instructor. Functional strength, conditioning, mobility, and a simple, repeatable program that fits into your normal life. Check it out. Link is in the description, and let's get to work.
And because people say, oh, it was a test by the government. Well, my response to that is, if that was a test by the government, then they just completely failed. Because now, if there were some deadly virus that comes out that did have a 10% fatality rate, I'm sorry, you're very likely not going to be able to get anybody to do anything you want because the amount of distrust that they have based off the previous experience.
Yeah.
So your mechanism for control actually might have exploded in your test, in your little test bed.
Yeah.
Which would kind of suck if it was real. Yeah. People are like, I remember the last time. They're like, no, this time it's for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no. Yeah, I guess, back to the kind of chain of original questioning, I do see parallels there, but I still am baffled by the World War II scenario of an entire country getting to the point where they knew what was going on and still did nothing. Even if it's uncomfortable, your job's on the line, whatever, like you're talking about murdering people by the droves.
By the millions.
Yeah, and not, I still can't wrap my head around how they managed to accomplish that for as long as they did and at the scale that they did.
I think there is an aspect, well, let me ask you this. Do you think they'd be able to do that today?
I don't think so today, largely because of technology.
Correct, and access to information. I think they did have that, I hate to say this, but in their favor.
Yeah, like a state-sponsored media.
They had basically one microphone, whereas right now we all carry around an ability to broadcast and be our own microphone. I think it would be, not that it would make it impossible, but I think it actually would be harder for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I think if you look at like North Korea or even China, there's elements of that, where it's so controlled that there's a pretty skewed, you could argue that that's the case here in the United States even though between Starlink and just the internet, generally speaking, the access to a host of other opinions and narratives still our media manages to skew most people's perception to a pretty large degree. But
did you know that Donald Trump won the election because of Starlink? I saw that one a lot online. Elon Musk is providing Starlink to polling and voting centers. It's Elon Musk. He did it through Starlink. Yeah. Like, guys, Starlink is an internet connection, and I don't think voting machines are connected to the internet. Is it possible? Perhaps, but I mean, let's maybe take a look at what this baseline technology actually is.
Yeah, I actually don't know if it's connected or not. I mean, I know there's an enormous electrical component. I do think, as dumb as it may sound, going back to paper ballots, I think is actually the better way to do it at this point.
Do you remember the hanging Chad situation we had in Florida with Al Gore and George Bush?
Oh, yeah.
They were literally, they hand counted that stuff. That's where the term hanging Chad came from, the not completely perforated voting.
Yeah.
We push the circle and it swings down, but it doesn't come off. A hanging Chad.
I still think that's the better option with voting machines being so easy to, I mean, the 2020 election of the bump in Wisconsin overnight of 3 million votes or whatever that came out of nowhere.
Stop it. Have you looked into this?
Have you?
No.
I mean, I haven't. I'll be transparent. Like, I haven't gone all the way down the hole, but I remember.
There's a fantastic headlines, but 3 million. You're going to tell me that nobody would notice a difference in 3 million? I mean, what's the population of Wisconsin? 47?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, it's at least enough for me to say maybe that's not a great idea.
Our voting should be secure.
But how do you accomplish that?
I mean, one way is you do the same thing that is required for people who want to drive a car. You have an identification. And, the argument against that is somehow that is disproportionate for less economically privileged communities, that they don't have the ability to get access to that. That's, to me, I'm like, we can solve that problem. Take it to them. Then we go to those neighborhoods. Here's an idea. With your Starlink, take a portable identification car, vehicle, whatever it is, and blanket these neighborhoods and put an ID to a face, provide them a government-issued ID, and guess what? When you go to vote, if one doesn't match the other.
I don't know how voter ID is at all controversial I mean, I really don't. Like, because even the example you used, I mean, that same metric is used for so many other things that are crucial to people's day-to-day lives. And I also think there's an element of kind of backhanded racism involved in assuming that specific groups of people aren't capable of getting a driver's license.
We'll just take the race out of it. Like I said, provide the service for them, go to where they are. Don't even need, we'll come to your house.
Yeah.
Apartment, wherever you live, we'll come to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rub is always, and it doesn't necessarily change with paper ballots, is who's counting them, who controls the mass actual votes themselves, and who's keeping them honest. I mean,
We should let Canada count them.
That'd be a great idea. Now you're talking.
But then it's like, who in Canada? I'm like, obviously somebody from Alberta in a lifted truck.
Somebody who only speaks French.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite quote?
What you allow in your presence is your standard. And that's a bastard, because that goes right back to your question about Germany. That goes right back to feeling the temperature rise as you're a frog in the pot of water. If you see something and you don't do something, and I'm not trying to tell people to do stuff like what just happened in Australia, where an unarmed dude charged a dude with the rifle, even though golf clap for you, sir.
Yeah.
If you see something and you don't do something, or if you expect a standard but if you're not living it yourself, the first thing you need to go do is look in the mirror. It's a tough one, man. And a lot of people think that I'm talking about the world externally. And I think that's when I first heard that quote, that was probably more how I took it, because that's an easier optic. But then you realize if you really want to weaponize that, you turn it inward, and what you allow in your presence. Like, oh, how do I allow myself to talk to myself? How do I allow my inner monologue interact with my external monologue? How am I as a husband and a father and a business owner? Like, oh, I kind of suck in some of these areas.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, the standard, I guess, and that's across the board, can be tough. I mean, I imagine you've run into the same thing as you get older, as you do different things in your life, people that you were really close with in your 20s, 30s, 40s, that tends to change, and you outgrow some people, whatever. And I think that's, at least for me, the hardest kind of metric or standard to maintain is, every year that I get older, like evaluating long-term relationships that I've had with people, and kind of coming to that realization that this isn't really serving me, not to sound selfish, but it's just like, I don't have what I used to have in common with this person, and it doesn't really make sense to even, from some perspective, waste time maintaining a relationship, because you only have so much bandwidth, and it's like, I'd rather spend it on the people that it's a better fit, maybe, or it's more of a representation of who I want in that circle of 5 or 10 or what have you.
I think that's fair, especially if you turn that optic on yourself as well. Parents are an interesting thing, and it's a great example of how relationships can change over a course of time. When I was young, and I'm sure this is true for most people, like, your parents they're the example for everything. That's all that you know. And then I became a parent myself, and now my dad's 78, going on 79. And I don't know when exactly I first started having these thoughts, but the realization is, like, they're just people. They're doing the best that they can. And my relationship with my dad has changed very much over time. And honestly, at this point, I'm not going to say I'm switching into a caregiving role, but I can see the writing on the wall with that. And so the dynamics of our relationship, it has to change. Now, obviously, with family, and I will say this, there are times where you do need to cut family out too, depending on the level of toxicity. But with family, like on that one, I have to constantly check in with myself on that one too. And am I bringing the value? Am I bringing what they need? You know what I mean? I think it's a fair thing to view the people that are around you in your life through that lens. And I just try to remind myself that we're all just people. It's really easy to put a higher expectation on somebody else than it is on yourself. And we all change over time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't discount that at all, and maybe it sounds almost arrogant to say, like, oh, this person isn't serving me. I guess I don't mean it in a one-way street that way. I guess just the symbiotic relationship of a nature, generally speaking, like, is this a positive in my life or is it not?
Well, look at marriages. Sometimes, depending on when you got married, you're either you can grow in parallel directions or you can grow apart. One of those is probably going to lead to a long-term relationship, and the other one might lead to the end of it. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that people can grow together or they can grow in different directions. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. So in the 8 years since you were on here last, obviously I was on your show almost a year ago now, but
was it that long ago?
Yeah, I mean, it was like February or March of
Damn.
this year. So I am curious. I mean, you started your own Black Rifle brick and mortar, done a shit ton of skydiving, podcast, both Cleared Hot and Change Agents, which didn't exist then. Change Agents didn't. Have done extremely well. Jiu-Jitsu, you went from, I don't even think you were training the last time you were on, and now you're a
No,
black
I wasn't.
belt.
Yeah.
It just, I guess, catch us up, generally speaking, what was the catalyst for any or all of those things, and what has kind of led you down the path that you're on now?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. So I was on, you said it was 8 years ago?
Yeah, it was, July of 2018.
Okay, so I had just moved to Montana then. And a lot of the stuff that you talked about actually came post-move to Montana. And people ask why we moved up there. Long story short, my ex-wife was born and raised in Montana. Most people I know who have been from there have this gravitational pull. They want to go back. So we ended up going back, and we were visiting. She had family in the Kalispell area. And so that was the place we visited, as opposed to the place where she was born, which was over the mountain range to the eastern side of Kalispell. And brought the kids up. The first part was we bought an investment property. We were gifted a trip to Scotland, and we were staying at a guy's, for lack of a better term, penthouse in Scotland, and it was amazing. We got airline tickets from the guy. It was actually set up from Tom Dietz, an ex-team guy.
Really?
Yeah, who was my first executive officer. Made fun of me when I was getting ready to go to Captain's Mass the first time I lost my trident. But in the hallway as I was getting ready to go in, he mocked me, and it still cuts deep to this day, even though it was completely deserved. He set it up. We went over there. Amazing trip. And we were talking at the time, like, how cool would it be to have something like this to be able to do for other people? And that's what got us looking for an investment property, which, let me be very clear. Economically, I borrowed money from everybody in my family that I knew to be able to afford this. I'm not washing my ass with $100 bills. And at the time, this was way pre-COVID, and the cost of borrowing money was much, much lower than it is now. So by buying that house, it gave us a place to go to start visiting after those initial trips. And we did, and we spent an almost, I remember picking up, that's how stupid I am. My kids were going to school in San Diego. I picked them up in my F-150, and my plan was I was going to drive straight to Montana nonstop. We made it to Idaho Falls, which isn't bad from San Diego. It's a stretch.
Yeah.
Barely made it to a hotel. I was about to drive us off of the road. Woke up the next day, got into Montana. My ex-wife and daughter made the smart call and flew in a few days later, with Chachi, by the way, miniature dachshund, and spent the whole month there. And the change in the kids, they were outside. It was like a banner year of snow, too. There was a picnic table, and I would swipe it off every night, and you'd come out to 8 inches of just powder. And my sister was there with her family, and my dad, and we were getting these big, jugs of beer and just having a good time and just putting them in the snowbanks overnight. And it was awesome. So we came back, I'm like, what are we doing? We got to get out of here. So there was nothing holding us in place. I was already doing the podcast at the time, and I was already doing public speaking. But beyond that, everything that I do now has come since then. So we moved to Montana, and I got heavy into teaching skydiving, specifically I was contracting through a company that was working with the PJ and CCT. After they get through their basic course, they would do some additional jump training with us to kind of bridge the gap between, we'll call it, schoolhouse experience and what's going to be expected in a real-world free-fall environment. So a couple weeks with them when they would come through, doing a bunch of that stuff. The podcast was still going on. The public speaking was still going on. I met Evan right before we moved to Montana. But the brick and mortar shop is only 3 years old. So there was a 5-year gap in that. And Black Rifle, Evan was going through this phase of, we're going to open stores, we're not. And I watched that pendulum many times. And I finally caught him on a day where they were going to do one, where he was open to the idea of doing it. I was like, hi, can you just sign this piece of paper? I don't have to do anything with it right now, but this would be great to have in the back pocket. It's like, yep. Met somebody in Montana, my original business partner, who had the financial ability to get us kicked off. We ended up finding somebody to invest in the coffee shop to fund the building and the opening of the shop. So I started building that. Jiu-Jitsu, I started about a year after I got into Montana. So it was before I came down, and dove pretty deep into that. I enjoyed it. I enjoy learning new things. I enjoy constantly trying to figure out stuff that you're not good at. I think it's the key to physical and mental youth, or delaying age as much as possible. So totally fell in love with that. Just because I don't think you can master it. I still believe that to this day. And so started doing the jiu-jitsu along the way. The Black Rifle Open February of 26 will be our 3-year anniversary. So in Feb of 23, I probably started jiu-jitsu in 20. Yep, in 2020 or 2019, probably 2020 though. And then the podcast, was at my house, and then I got a small office suite, and then I moved to a larger office suite once the change. Ironclad is a production company based in Virginia Beach. They do a lot of work with the SEAL Foundation. Have you ever worked with them?
I have. They actually did our Warrior Dog.
So Jeremy and the guys at Ironclad, they're awesome. I had been introduced to them when I was doing one of the skydiving projects I did was the Wingsuit jump, which was fundraising for the SEAL Foundation. So I went out to the SEAL Foundation headquarters. I think that's where I first met them, and then had a little bit of touch points along the way with some brands. Jeremy pitched me on the idea of change agents, so we integrated that. I think we're in our 3rd year of that now. The podcast, we were talking before we started, just about studio designs. I'm gonna try to level it to the next level from a production value. Mid-January, the new studio build should be complete, and then from there we'll see how it goes. But that's kind of what I've been. I mean, that's the wave tops. Each one of those verticals is like hell on earth.
Yeah. Well, I guess that about wraps it up. So
that's all I got. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm curious, about all of them, if we can spend a little bit of time on each. The jiu-jitsu in particular, was there a thing, a catalyst that, because you don't just, most people don't just start. Some people do, but was there a thing that was like, made you walk through the door and decide this is what I'm going to spend some time doing? Yeah.
So I have, about a year after, no, it was more than a year, because I went to jiu-jitsu about a year after we started. Or we got to Montana.
You'd trained some before that.
No.
None?
None.
Not at the command, nothing?
No, we did the fire hands, for lack of a better term, when we were in green team. One for a week, you either got punched in the head before house runs, or you did house runs and then got punched in the head.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I don't know how that contract got signed. I have questions.
Same here. Same here.
We'll leave the name out of it because people get so happy.
I know it.
But about 6 months after we moved up there, I did one of the appearances on Joe's show, and a guy reached out over Instagram. This guy's hypothetical name is Nelson, and he hates when I tell people that he slid into my DMs, because I didn't know what that meant. I thought. I didn't realize you. I just didn't realize that usually that means it's like a guy sliding into a girl's DMs.
Yeah.
And so, he slid into my DMs. He was like, "Hey, I'm a local sheriff. Love snowboarding. Let's link up." So we communicated over, I might have sent him my phone number. First time I ever met him was at the top of the Whitefish Mountain ski resort. I had just gotten into snowboarding, meaning I had snowboarded 6 times probably. And I texted him like, "Hey, getting on the lift." He's like, "Cool, I'll see you at the top." And come off the lift, had no idea what he looks like. I don't know if anybody's ever been snowboarding. You're wearing a helmet, you're wearing a
Everybody looks the same.
Everybody looks the same. And a guy like scooches over. He's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm Nelson." High five. And we went and snowboarded. And he's awesome. He's become one of my best friends. He had found jiu-jitsu, I'm going to say, a year and a half to 2 years before that, because he was a 4-stripe white belt. And for people listening, there's white, blue, purple, brown, and black. Some schools do stripes, some do not. If the school does stripe, you're going to get 4 stripes per belt, and then you will at some point get the next belt. Most people hold on to them, put them on a display somewhere. So he'd been at it for about 2 years, and he was like a cookie salesman. "You got to come to jiu-jitsu, 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 jiu-jitsu." And I was aware of what jiu-jitsu was because there were people doing it in the teams when I left, but I hated it because of how passionate they were.
It's like CrossFit, vegan.
Yeah, except I ended up working for CrossFit. Yeah. So I actually avoided it because of just how enthusiastic. And it would bring me pleasure to say that I thought something was dumb that somebody was enthusiastic about. So people are like, "Hey, you want to do it?" I'm like, "You're so gay. I'm not doing that. Why do you got to wear pajamas and roll around?" So yeah, I could have been at this for a lot longer than I have been. And Nelson, I swear to God, every time I saw him, jiu-jitsu, 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 jiu-jitsu. We were at my house one day. We had definitely been drinking, and he was like, if you ever come to jiu-jitsu, I'm going to choke you like this, and then I'm going to do that. And I finally asked him, I said, if I go to a class, will you just shut up about this? And he said, yeah. He's like, there's one on Tuesday. I'll go with you. I'll be your partner. So I walked into one of the foundation classes, and I think I had to buy a gi and a white belt. Did not know how to tie it. I have a picture from the end of the class at that day. I remember my partner was a guy named Cody, who was a purple belt at the time. He's now he's got to have at least a stripe on his black belt. He owns the gym in Big Fork, which is on the southeast side from where you came to visit in Kalispell. It's the north end of the lake, but over on southeast from where we were. So he's a very high level practitioner, and it was just awesome. And I remember leaving that class. I'm like, God, I am so stupid. Shortly after that, Nelson got his blue belt. He is still a blue belt.
No way.
He is a man that has 15 hobbies, but only time for 10. He's a hunter. He's a guide. He does snowmobiling, rafting, motorcycle. You know what I mean? It's every season has 7 things. Oh, by the way, full-time sheriff.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that fell off. But that's legitimately, I got into it from a dude who I tell him he's quit. He's like, no, dude, I go once every 6 months. But that's how it started. It was so funny. I absolutely fell in love with it. And he, I would say, not negatively, fell out of love with it or just ran out of time.
Yeah. Did he mop the floor with you that first go? No?
Nope. Never. There's something to being aggressive and physical.
Yeah.
He has the stature of like a well-muscled female, so I can throw him around at will.
Yeah. The purple belt, maybe another story though.
Oh God, no. It's like at that. Yeah. If you're a white belt and you encounter a purple belt, have fun.
Yeah. The progression that I've seen is impressive though. I mean, was it about a year per belt for you or was one more of a stagnation point than others?
I didn't keep track. I got stripes on my white belt, and I think they might have done a few on my blue belt, but I wash my belt because I don't believe in magic, but I do believe in staff. So I don't think that you're going to wash out all of the magic. I do think you should care about your training partners and the health and sanity, or not sanctity, but sanitation of your gym, because antibiotics suck. So I didn't really pay attention to it. I think I was a white belt for about a year and a half. And then after that, I think it was about a year. I don't even know what day I got my black belt, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm curious for that progression. I mean, you hear a lot of people talk about this belt is the hardest. I know it's going to be purely practitioner dependent. For you personally, was there a hardest belt or one that you felt like was the biggest jump?
I have found that having a black belt means that you're everybody's target. I'm not going to say that it reduces the amount of enjoyment you can get out of it, but I'm not going to not say that it reduces the amount of enjoyment. Everybody thinks that today's going to be their day. And if they catch you, especially if you used to be a Navy SEAL, like I don't know if you guys know this, but I just tapped out a Navy SEAL. And he was a black belt. Surprisingly enough, you're not going to get your belt. And anybody with our old job is just a dude who had a weird occupation. I've heard people say, coaches say this a lot, the hardest belt to get is your white belt because you have to commit to doing something that's unknown. And I can buy that a little bit because people have to step outside of their comfort zone, but it's also kind of a lie because it doesn't get easier after that. I didn't find any of the belts to be hard. I found them all to be really, really fun because I enjoyed the process. And there was, at the school that I train at, it's your coach who decides when you're going to get the next belt. And we didn't have belt testing. And I've traveled around enough. I've seen a variety of different ways that belts are awarded. I've legitimately seen attendance-based. I don't think that goes all the way up the tree, but like from white to blue, they're legitimately counting attendance. I have seen gyms with punch cards, which I've also heard stories at those gyms where other people grab other people's punch cards and give them a little, to help out. My boy couldn't make it to class today, or could he? Hard to say, right? Especially if you got a big school. How the hell is he going to track it? I've seen belt testing where a group of people they'll start you in a position, and there's a bunch of instructors, and they kind of watch your first moves depending on what belt you are testing for. And then I'm repeating my wife at this point, who's a very high level black belt, and she is a coach. White to blue belt, they don't expect you to be able to dominate anybody, but they're looking for you to make at least your first move, if not your second move, should be in the correct direction. Not like literal direction, but if you need to get on your side or whatever it is, or shrimp or move, they want to see those first. They don't expect you to win, but they want to see that you're headed in the right direction. So I've seen those type. I've seen individual testing. Somebody told me once about there was a verbal component to it as well, like an oral portion of the test. I've only heard that once. And where I train, my coach, he teaches, and they're watching. He's out there on the mats rolling, so you can get that feedback as well. And then he's also watching how you're doing with other students at belt levels and weights and age and stuff like that. And competition is another one I've seen too, where depending on the gym, you might not get advanced until they expect everybody to compete, and you might need to win or podium or whatever it may be. But it doesn't get any easier. So to tell people that walking through the door and starting is the hardest thing that you can do, I disagree with that, because it does suck. You're going to lose for a couple of years. You're going to know more about the ceiling than the floor because you're laying facing up getting smashed. But again, you can reframe how you think about that. Is that hard? I mean, I guess in the moment you're uncomfortable a little bit, but think about the skill that you're learning. Leverage and weight distribution and tactics and techniques. Like, to me, that was utterly fascinating. So none of it was hard. I just really liked going to class. I enjoyed the actual activity of grappling.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I tend to, I guess, prefer or just like whoever your coach is that you spend the most time with from an instruction standpoint, deciding based on what he thinks and feels, and not having no, you have to be this many times, or you got to be able to, if I tell you to get into this position, that there's no hesitation, or this many moves, or it's just like, no, I feel like you're at this level and now I'm going to give it to you. Like, I think that makes the most sense. But
especially if they're out there training with you, I've asked 50 coaches now, walk me through your white to black belt progression. I have had 0 repeat answers.
Yeah.
So and who's to say what's right or wrong, you know?
Yeah. Do you feel like the learning curve, I guess, slows way down at a certain point? Like, once you hit, the progression from white to purple is a steep curve. Even
the progression from white to blue is a steep curve.
But I guess, do you feel like using purple as the midway point, right?
Yeah.
From white to halfway through purple to black, do you feel like it's anywhere close as big of a learning curve from halfway through purple to black? So,
I'll answer this, but I want to preface this with I'm not a coach. And again, I'll let you know when I'm repeating stuff that my wife says, because she does this professionally. And my answer to this will be a little bit of both. The way she describes it is it's not that the learning curve shallows, it's that the performance differences shallow. Because at purple belt, you will start to see things that you didn't know were aware that they were even possible at white or even blue. So at purple belt, you start polishing your game and working a little bit more on nuance, which are micro changes as opposed to the macro differences that you're seeing from white to purple. So I think the performance, and one of the things I think this helps people stay in jiu-jitsu, because oftentimes they'll say, I just keep getting my ass kicked by the same person and I'm not getting any better. I'm like, would you kick your own ass from a year ago? And they're always like, yes, of course. I'm like, just remember that, because that's actually all that matters. But when you first start, you'll have these galactic moments of like, oh, if I just get on my side, I can breathe a little bit more. That's pretty awesome. Maybe I'm going to do that always. Like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then it's going to be really hard to get you flat on your back again. Not impossible, but hard, and you've just made a huge jump. There's not really any jumps like that I experienced between like purple belt and black belt. It's smaller things. It's strategy. Hey, here's a better way to use your leverage. Here's a better way to set somebody up for something. And I have had these moments where, because I've gone through the curriculum now enough for a few years at the school I train at, but every time we go through the curriculum, you see something that's a little bit, you're like, oh, I've never even thought about doing that. It's like, yeah, you didn't even realize that was possible because you were overwhelmed with where you were at in your learning curve. So I think, I don't know the right way to put it, as long as you're fascinated and you can stay engaged in learning, I think the learning curve stays the same. And I think that's why people can do this for life. But you have to be comfortable with you're not going to get these galactic jumps.
Yeah.
It's now you're at the 1,000 grit sandpaper taking a pass across the blade.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Do you roll with your wife?
We can drill. It is not worth for anybody ever in the history of men and women
If
to
you're
have
in
a
a
competitive
relationship.
role
Yeah.
with your significant other.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let me level with you here. If there's one thing that I do know, it's that showing up matters for your family, your teammates, your business, and your country. But a while back, I hit a wall. My nights were wrecked, I was tossing, turning, no real deep sleep, and my days were even worse. That's when I found Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values: hard work, integrity, and delivering results. When I found Dream, everything changed. I started sleeping through the night without tossing and turning, and I woke up energized, not groggy. It's been an absolute game changer for me. Now here's what's inside. A powerful blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. It's designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up ready to perform. No next day fog, no shortcuts, no junk, just results. And it tastes damn good. It's become part of my nightly routine. I put Beam's Dream Powder to the test, and the first night was lights out in minutes. A week in, and I had sharper focus, more patience at home, and the energy to attack the day instead of limping through it. Now here's the deal. Beam has already logged 17.5 million better nights of sleep for people who refuse to settle. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. You can try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time only. So if you use my discount code, which is MicDrop, all caps, all one word, you can get their best-selling Dream Powder for just $39. Go to shopbeam.com/MicDrop and use the code MicDrop, all caps, all one word, at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/MicDrop and use the code MicDrop for up to 40% off.
I'm not going to say I've experienced it. I'll just say hypothetically.
You're not going to not say.
I'm not going to say hypothetically. Just drill.
Yeah.
And if you can beat your wife, don't.
Was there ever a point, I assume, like, I don't know how long you guys have been together, but was there a point where it was like, now I know I can beat her and it's very definitive?
There was a point where she was no longer able to control the position that I was in, meaning I could get out of whatever. And that a lot of that is size and strength, but knowing size and strength can be outmaneuvered by technique by a lighter opponent, which is kind of the whole emphasis of jiu-jitsu anyway, to a point.
Yeah.
And then she knows far more than me technique-wise. And I think actually most women are much better technique tacticians than men because they have to be, because they don't have the size and strength of most men. So I think that's a good thing. I would say her technique has always been and probably will always be sharper than mine. Size and strength is real.
Yeah.
And
I guess when you guys first...
Oh, she'd beat my ass.
Yeah. Well, I guess at what point was it more, pretty even up and then ultimately...
Probably mid-blue belt.
Mid-blue belt. It's interesting, the parallels in jiu-jitsu and dog training, at least in kind of the space that I deal with high-level bite dogs, naturally forwardly aggressive towards human beings, protection, police, military, et cetera, is that it's the exact same thing that way, is that women typically are far better trainers and handlers that way because their technique has to be so precise and their timing has to be so perfect, because they can't just kind of, bully the dog around and bump them with their knees and whatever. There's a lot of parallels between those two, which is fascinating. But
at the highest levels, if you watch, like there was just the no-gi World Championships, I think, IBJJF. I think the men and women, like it's the incredible display of technique. If you go to maybe out of that world though, and this is totally anecdotal just from what I've seen, if you go to a purple belt mat and there's two rhinoceros men fighting it out, you're like, okay, there is some technique there.
but not a lot.
But a lot of this is raw horsepower and anger. You go over to the women's purple belt,
Yeah.
you're like, oh,
It's like a clinic.
it's a scalpel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reality is, if guys could roll like that, they'd be way better. But why? You know,
yeah.
how about I just grab a hold of you and
Yeah.
push as hard as I can, or pull as hard as I can?
Yeah. Do you have a game that you would explain? Like, do you?
I like to lay on people. I try to do lazy jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
One of the coaches I've trained with the most outside of my own coach is a guy named Henry Akins, who he wasn't Rickson Gracie's first American black belt, but I think he might have been his fastest American black belt. He got his black belt in 8 years under Rickson, which I believe was probably safe to say notoriously a little bit longer to give out a black belt. And he is the single most suffocating and uncomfortable roll to this day. Every time I roll with him, it's the same. You are literally doing everything you can to keep this son of a bitch off of you. And it's not working. And honestly, I think he messes with you. So he's like, I could get there in 6 steps, but how about we do 16? Because you'll be so much more exhausted by the time I'm laying on you. It's suffocating. He takes away space and doesn't give it back. And he's constantly using gravity against you.
Yeah.
I do the best that I can to replicate that, to make your opponent carry your weight so it's harder for them. And it's funny, he talks about carrying weight from the bottom. I'm like, what? What do you mean you're laying on your back? He's like, yeah, there are ways that you can put your weight on people even from the back. And then he shows you, like, son of a bitch. Like, okay, I wasn't thinking about doing that.
Yeah.
With the difference of just shifting weight. And again, as I get older, you know, I'm 48 now, I can't out-athleticize a 20-year-old. I could probably out-technique them, maybe out-strategy them to a point. But then beyond that, I got to weigh them down and slow them down to the point where it's like, let's at least start it even. You know,
Right.
First that's going to be me fucking with you a little bit, you know, to elevate your heart rate or get you tired from carrying my weight. So that's what I try to replicate. I try to be heavy all the time, everywhere.
Yeah. Do you have a go-to or favorite or even most successful submission?
I mean, I'm a fan of taking what's available. I think everything should end in a wrist lock. So if you catch somebody in a triangle, you lock it in, get it to the point where they almost tap, and then just follow that hand out. And just, no, I mean, that's a total asshole move, but I respect it. I mean, the best, one of the things, and it was my wife that said this, she said a black belt shouldn't be measured by what they hold on to. They should be measured by what they let go of. And I tell that to as many people as possible because it's something I think about too. And I'm sure you felt this, and I definitely have. You're like so close to getting something, so you just hold on even harder.
Oh, yeah.
And what ends up happening is you completely surrender position. You end up on the bottom. You're getting smashed. And what you should have done is just move on and go to whatever is next. So I try to keep that in mind. Submissions are great, but and again, Henry is a good example of this. He'll take what you give him. He can kind of force what he wants, though, based off what he does, because he knows the potential reactions if he can get you into this position. And that's where people will say, it's like, oh, you know, rolling with him, it's like he can tell the future. He can't tell the future, but you have 4 options from where you were at, and he knows all 4 of those. And then he made one more move, which left you with 2 options. And it's like, I can get ahead of you if you only have 2 options. So, but I've seen him do it too. I mean, he's a super high level practitioner. And if somebody, you know, moves or gets their elbow to them, he just lets go, but he stays on top. He's still carrying the weight, and he moves on and he takes whatever's available. So I try to implement that in my game too.
Is there a submission that you find you're the most successful getting?
In a gi, it's a cross collar choke.
Yeah. Do you do any no-gi?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just not a lot, or?
I will when the opportunity presents itself, and I try to roll in the gi with as many no-gi grips as possible.
Yeah.
Where I live, I mean, we were just down in Costa Rica. No-gi actually might be a little bit more applicable there because people are wearing shorts on the beach or a T-shirt. Where I live, you're wearing pants and a jacket 6 to 7 months out of the year.
Yeah.
I will choke the shit out of you with your jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like a cross-collar choke, and it's it's not flashy. I mean, you know, for people who don't know, it's literally one arm comes across the throat and cuts off one side, and the other arm comes across, and you cut off the blood supply. It's not super fancy. They probably teach it in most foundation courses. And yeah, I love it. It's my favorite.
Yeah. Have you ever competed, or will you?
I competed. We have an internal competition called the Gorilla Cup. I think I had 1 or 2 stripes on my white belt. And they're like, we're going to do the Gorilla Cup. And Actually, son of a bitch, I think it was Nelson who told me to do it too. So I went up there and did the Gorilla Cup. I don't even remember where we finished or how many people it was. It was a white belt match, so it was just defined by its violence and lack of technique. And then when I got my purple belt, my wife was going to be coaching at a competition, a Naga competition, in a city that was north of Salt Lake. So I signed up and went with her so I could go.
Not something that you're...
I don't have the time.
Yeah.
When earlier, bringing you up to speed on the stuff that I do, nowhere in there do I have 6 to 8 weeks to truly dial in. Because if I wanted to do that and truly be competitive, I would want to devote the time necessary to do that. But I got to look at what pays my bills. You're right. Jiu-Jitsu for me is a hobby. I'm an aggressive hobbyist. I'm passionate about it, but I'm a hobbyist. I don't have the time to allocate for competition, and quite frankly, nor do I care.
I'm right there with you. I mean, for me, it's even more so about the risk versus reward. It's like the gym that I train at is very competitive that way. They compete constantly. I mean, they go to everything, or a lot of the members do anyway. And I mean, in almost every case, multiple people are injured afterwards. It's like, it's far more common that they get injured, which makes sense. You're going against somebody who has no interest in your, joint health or not injuring you. Generally,
some of that is on them. Like if you're caught,
well, sure, but
tap.
But still, I mean, I guess just the
competition. Here's the thing: a lot of the times, yes. Most of the injuries, though, you'll find is not because the person you're competing with is trying to hurt you. It's you're doing everything you can. Yeah. Because it's in a competition setting. I know people are like, I just let my elbow melt because I didn't want to tap. I'm like, that's on you, for clarity. Yeah. Don't pitch that as, the competitor was trying to kill me. I'm like, you just told me you let your elbow melt.
Yeah. I guess just the general frame of competition, it's going to lend itself to a higher percentage chance of being injured than not.
Well, the pace is way higher too.
Yeah, and it's because you've never trained with,
Totally. And like you said, both people are there for their own reasons. I've never really met anybody who signed up for any type of competition with the intent to lose. So yeah, it's going to be, and again, leading up to those competitions, I've watched my wife do this. She has to tell people like, listen, I'm preparing for a competition. I need to pace this up. I'm going to go a little bit harder. This isn't personal, but brace for impact.
Yeah, I'm coming after you.
Yeah, and it's not that she's coming after them. It's she has to do what she has to do to prep for that.
Right, yeah.
And I don't have the time or interest.
Skydiving, is that something that you've kept doing a fair bit of?
Not since I moved to Montana as much because there aren't any DZs up there. I could take a decade off of like basic skydiving and be okay. I haven't done any wingsuiting in a long time. I haven't done base jump stuff in years. The amount of currency required to do those things safely, I don't have the ability to do that anymore. So at this point, it's like, hey, do you guys, does somebody want to go do a cool jump trip or a jump project? I would hop back in, get current on whatever I needed to, and then be able to do it.
So kind of the same question with specifically the wingsuit stuff and the world record stuff. Was there a catalyst, a light switch of wanting to go all in and take it to that level?
I wish I could say there was. I got into wingsuiting because I had gotten out of the military. I had stopped working for CrossFit. I had started doing some professional skydiving, basically just being sponsored to skydive for logos, canopy, stuff like that. And we were in Boston. And a guy I know was talking about, I don't know how it came up, but he was talking about trying to set a record of some kind, skydiving, doing it fundraising. And he actually brought up the idea of the wingsuit distance record, which is the one that I went after in 2015. So it wasn't my idea. I was like, oh yeah, that's totally awesome. We should definitely do that. And he was like, yeah, if you want to do that, like the brand will support you. I had never put a wingsuit on before that, just for clarity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's how my thought process goes. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. We should do that. So then what did I do? I obviously bought one, found a mentor, did an immense amount of jumps in that. And then, so people ask this one all the time. There's wingsuit skydiving and wingsuit base jumping. The suit is the same. And I do have people ask me, how do you land the suit? And I say, well, unless you want to do it only once, you do have to wear a parachute, even in the base jumping world. So base jumping, though, is single parachute. Skydiving has a main and a reserve, as you know, but the listener may not. No reserve for base jumping because generally you're just closer to the ground. There's not going to be a lot of time for you to deploy a reserve if there's any time at all. So it's a single parachute, but it's packed very similar to a reserve and a skydiving rig. It doesn't have to be by a rigger. You pack it yourself, but they're snappy. They open quick and they're designed to do so. You expose the nose so it just grabs the air and the ram air parachute opens quickly. Not something you want to do in the skydiving world because you have a main parachute, so you can pack it differently. It's actually really comfortable if you pack it properly and you bleed your airspeed off. But to start wingsuit skydiving, or to start wingsuit base jumping, you need to skydive at first, get good, and then you take the wingsuit into the base jumping world. That's what I would call the safe progression, which is exactly what I did. But at the same time, we were still targeting doing the distance record for the wingsuit, which we ended up doing that in August of 2015. And that I worked with Killcliff and Skull Candy, the headphone manufacturer. It was kind of like my first project with a larger project with a brand. It was awesome. We raised $200,000 for the SEAL Foundation. We did break the distance record at that time. I never even filed for it. So, and then that record was broken. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot. And then it just got broken again by the Red Bull guys, like smashed by a couple of miles.
What was the distance for your record?
18.25 miles. Wow. From exit to feet on the ground.
Man. Is there anything going through your mind during that 18-mile trek other than exactly what you're supposed to be doing? Like, do you ever find your mind wandering and like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first thought is my arms are tired. Because the suits, they have little ram air inlets as well. So it's a nylon suit. And from a side profile, if you lay it on itself, it can look very thin if it's not rigidly inflated. But have you ever looked down and this might lose some listeners, but you were free fall qualified, right?
No.
What?
No, I mean,
were you even a SEAL?
No, I did the online portion. It was actually, I mean, it was in that window of time where all of my operational years was still before it was outsourced from the Army free fall course or whatever. So before it was in-house, and then they were transitioning it to in-house. I was an instructor at the time, and they're like, hey, we're going to send you through free fall. And I was like, I'm getting out in a year and a half.
Well, there's your mistake. Don't tell them that.
Well, I mean, to me, like at that time, I was much more like, give it to somebody who needs it. It was like, to me, I would feel selfish going through free fall, taking a billet, because there were a bunch of other guys in that same position that didn't have it yet for whatever reason. Yeah, just wrong place, wrong time. There were always guys that got the billets ahead of me, and so I just never ended up free fall qualified.
Okay, I'll explain it. Yeah, okay. So static line parachutes, as you know, it's literally the fabric, and there's some cut ports in the back on some of them, so you can turn and face away from everybody else as your lower body detonates into the ground at a high rate of speed. God, static line jumping. So ram air parachutes or free fall parachutes, that literally rams the air into the nose. And there's usually 7 cells or 9. And they can be semi-elliptical, elliptical. They make them out of crazy materials, these like sail materials. So the nose or the front, the very top and the front, you can open it up. And it just looks like, well, I'll say a rectangle. And there's ribs. They're fabric ribs. And as the ram air goes into it, it inflates that and it provides that level of rigidity. There's cross ports, large circles that are cut into the ribs so the air can go in and then inflate the other cells as well. And that's how you get the wing structure. So a wingsuit, on the outside, if you lay it down, you wouldn't realize it, but all of that exists in the wingsuit too. It has those ribs that go down, like under your arm. It's a bunch of different ribs and cross ports as well so it can inflate. It's not like the wooden flag behind you. It's not that rigid. I would say it's like an lightly filled, maybe medium filled air mattress. So it's doing some of the work, but you have to drive it with your body into the position that you want. But when it inflates, it gives you that performance ability of essentially a wing.
So, I mean, is it, I guess, body tension wise similar to like a quarter of a cross, like a cable crossover where you're fighting it that way?
Yeah, your hands would probably you have a thumb down position because the leading edge of your arm, you're internally rotating your shoulder a little bit and driving kind of down into it. But yeah, stepping on the gas pedal with your feet, stretching the suit, and then an arched position, like with your hips low in a free fall without a suit. That's how you maintain a stable vertical fall rate. It's how you recover from an abnormal attitude or you can stop a spin. In a wingsuit, if you really want to push the distance, you're going to, not that you're going the other way where you would be going from concave to convex, but you are straightening out your body, pushing your toes. It's not awesome for the almost 8 minutes I was in free fall.
So that 18.25 miles is about 8 minutes.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the footage. I Z'd the exit, so it wasn't great. So I did a couple spins and had to reorient myself and then get going. But yeah, it was about 8 minutes of that static hold.
Man. Have you ever cramped in that position?
I think like the arch of the foot cramp, which by the way is the worst cramp on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine like that could kill you. Like if you had a really bad
I mean, take it easy.
shoulder
It's a foot
cramp,
cramp.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
No, I'm saying like there's parts of your body that if in that flight,
if you had to, you could totally relax and almost go back to like the free fall body position,
Okay.
and you would start falling much more vertically than horizontal. You'd be okay.
Yeah.
And when you first learn, you're kind of plowing through the air because you have that you have this ingrained sense that you need to arch when you get out of the aircraft,
Yeah.
and so you kind of look like the snow plow going through the air, and then but then it straightens out, and then people figure out how to get flat and then bend it over, and then the things just start booking.
yeah. What's the speed, ground speed that you're?
I think the fastest I was going was just over 200 miles an hour.
Man, that's crazy.
Thinner that was at altitude though.
Yeah.
A little bit thinner air. The speed decreased as we got down to the more dense air.
What was the Red Bull guys? What's their record?
I think they added another mile or two
Wow.
to it,
Yeah.
and they had everything going in their favor, which I totally support that. They had a tailwind. When I did the jump, there was no winds aloft, so it was just the suit. If I would have jumped out and had a 30 to 40 knot tailwind, I could have probably added a couple miles to that.
Wow. And you did an elevation record jump too, right?
That was the same one, 36,500. That wasn't, we were not able to achieve the record on elevation because it was essentially a caravan. I think it's a Cessna 206. Totally stripped down, just the oxygen tech, the pilot, and the oxygen bottle. I think the record is held by a multi-engine.
Oh, okay. And just before launch, I mean, can you kind of walk us through how long it takes to get up there? Like
Yeah.
once you're there, prep, like just kind of the soup to nuts.
I mean, so it's an hour pre-breathe, totally zipped up. The oxygen bottle I had on my body was strapped to down by one of my calves. So I had, it was a climbing harness, essentially. There was the chest strap, which is what holds your, the regulator, essentially, for the elephant trunk that came up to the mask. So the helmet, the mask, the goggles. It went into my suit which is a little zipper they make traditionally for chest-mounted cameras, but it was perfect for what we were doing. And then everything else was inside of the suit. So the oxygen bottle was just on a piece of webbing that was down by my calf. And then the oxygen bottle connector, all that stuff occurred underneath inside of the suit. But you got to get on, since you're going to the altitude, you pre-breathe for about an hour, which actually that's probably the worst part, is having the mask on for that long, because you have to have it on. It's like a feed bag on your face, just crushing the bridge of your nose. They start up the aircraft at about 45 minutes, slow taxi out. Probably took, I will estimate 30 to 45 minutes to get to altitude. And this whole time we're only breathing on the very large, like, aviator oxygen. It looks like, the big green ones that they deliver to wherever needs oxygen. That's in the aircraft. I'm breathing off that. The pilot's breathing off that. The oxygen tech is breathing off that. I think I had about 10 minutes of O2 available on the bottle. And I'm trying to remember the order. It's been over a decade since we've done this. I think he switched me over to my own bottle before he opened the door, but it's possible that he opened the door and then switched me over. You got 10 minutes to play with. Once the door's open, you're on jump run. It's not like you're going to sit back there and enjoy the view for 15 minutes. Turned all the GPS sensors. I had 2 sensors on my helmet. That's how we were tracking the distance. Cameras, obviously. As soon as he switches me over to the O2 bottle, like the one that was on my calf, you're on limited time. And honestly, if you could get down to like 20,000 feet, you'd be fine. Because if you do run out of oxygen, you still can breathe the external ambient air. It just comes into the mask, as opposed to having that positive pressure and then exhaling and it only going out. Waddle to the back to get into the best body position that you think you can. And at some point it's 3, 2, 1. Let's see how much I suck. And I sucked.
Yeah.
That was terrible. It's spinning out of control for like 5 rotations.
Is there throughout that process, I mean, the 45 minutes, that, at least putting myself in your shoes, seems like it would feel like an eternity. Between being uncomfortable and just the anticipation kind of butterfly nature, I guess. Did you find yourself thinking of that? Did your mind wander like right before you're getting ready to go? Or are you just contemplating, is this a good idea? Like, what's going through your mind this whole time?
No, I knew it wasn't a good idea before we went up there. We were there for a week. Because we were doing content around it as well for the brands, we did a bunch of basically practice jumps at lower altitude. We had a helicopter up there with a Cineflex ball that would fly next to the airplane, and I would do some exits to get, to put all the pieces together for the story. So we did high-speed exits. We did, at that point, and I was wearing the gear for the, not always with the oxygen bottle on, because sometimes we would get out at like 10,000 feet. It's just not necessary. So I was comfortable with the gear. We had a really good routine. For me, a lot of this stuff, it's about having a good routine. Working with Tad was the O2 tech's name. He always did stuff in the same order. He would check my gear in the same order. I always get in this. I did this base jumping too. Before I would exit, I would always check my gear in the same order. I would zip up my sleeves in the same order, touch my pilot chute, the small little parachute that you throw out into the wind that deploys your main parachute. I always did it in the same order, because for me, what'll get me into a place where I start questioning myself is if I'm just making it up on the day. I don't like that at all. So having that consistency, having that routine, your mind definitely wanders, but I've learned years ago, like, I don't try to control it, especially when you're 2 hours from whatever it is you're going to do. Like, what's the point of just being, crushing anxiety for 2 hours? So I let my mind go to wherever it wanted to go. Like, we start getting up there and the pilots are communicating, and we were communicating by, a Sharpie pen on a little white, not a piece of paper, but, something that we could write on, and a little whiteboard. And about 10 minutes out, that's when I start actively, like, let's start really dialing in the thought process. Like, all the thoughts, like the worry, like, am I going to see my kids again? Blah, 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 which is all real. And I don't mean to diminish that at all, but none of those thoughts help you in that moment. Let's start shedding that away. Say your goodbyes, walk yourself through whatever mental process you need to be able to put that down. And then as it gets closer, I try to just get my head closer to game time. And then by the time it's ready to go, like when you're standing at the door, when it's open, you have either put in the work or not. You either have the stones to step out and test gravity, or you don't. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get it done.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating thing, I guess, just that whole process and decision to even do it.
Highly choreographed, though. Like, you don't show up there and say, I would like to jump out at 36,500 feet today.
Yeah.
We measured the gear for us, put the gear on a bunch of times before even getting on the airplane, test fitted the mask, make sure everything was good. Positive pressure, make sure you got a seal. How are we going to load the air? You know what I mean? It's broken down into so many sequential steps. If we had done it the other way and just showed up, hey, this is what I want to do, and here's however much money you need to get rid of all these safety protocols and just let me do this, I'd have been losing my shit at the door. But it's all the work you put into it leading up to that point that makes it emotionally possible.
So very similar to high-level operations in the SEAL team.
It's identical.
In rehearsals.
It's identical. Yeah. You could look at any operation you want to and be like, oh my gosh, how are they able to accomplish that? I'm like, how much time do you have?
Repetition.
Let's break down how much time, let's just talk about how many times you've approached a door and assessed whether or not it opens inward or outward. Do you have 2 people? Do you have 4? How are we going to do this? Not once have I ever been on target and said to somebody, hey, this door looks like it opens inward. How do we do this?
This is a pocket door. What do we do?
I think this is a center-fed hallway. What should we do? And we draw something. And it's like, no. That's why you spend thousands of hours in a kill house. You know what to do. But if we did, for whatever reason, not do any of that, no planning, no rehearsal, and we showed up and tried to do it, oh my God.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Amazing for the bad guy, for sure.
Yeah, but that's how you do the impossible. You do it a sliver at a time, over years. It's all these different pieces that come together in execution. The mistake people make is they see that and they go, I want to do that. And my answer always is, that's awesome. However, sit down for a second and get a notebook, because I have to explain to you what actually made that possible. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with what occurred on target and everything to do with what led you to that place.
Yeah. And that's really I'd say the accurate, true story of everything in life is kind of that way, at any kind of high level. What altitude are you actually under canopy in that run? Or what altitude are you pulling?
I believe by the USPA and FAA,
There's
Standards, I think you have to have a main parachute out or attempted to deploy it by 2,000 feet. I had only audible altimeters. So I could not see. There was no chest-mounted altimeter because there was a risk that in free fall, the oxygen hose would wrap around it. So, a note to people. Put fresh batteries in your electronics. I had them set for a variety of altitudes, and the mistake that I made.
Hey folks, let me tell you that drinking and driving is a decision that will change your entire world. Things will never be the same once you get a DUI because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way your world could be irreversibly changed after drinking and driving. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You could face a life-altering injury or even death, but you're not the only one who could face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive could permanently change someone else's world. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving, the next time you're out drinking, call a ride share, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. Always plan for a safe ride home. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. It's never worth it to drive drunk. Do not risk it. Drive sober or get pulled over, paid for by NHTSA.
Is that I had one ear set for higher altitudes and one ear set for lower, like 5,000 feet, 3,500, 2,500. The ear that functioned was my higher altitudes.
That's handy.
The ear that didn't function was my lower one. But I had just gotten back not too long ago from a base jumping trip in Switzerland where you're very low to the ground. And you only have, camera one, camera two, camera one, camera two. And you get really used to wow, this is looking a little bit low. I started having a little bit of that experience at the tail end of that jump.
Oh, wow. Oh, shit.
Which wasn't that emotional because I'm like, it's been a good amount of time since I got my last beeps. That tree is starting to look like a tree. Those power lines are very visible.
Yeah.
We're going to end this.
So you don't know, in essence.
I mean, it was somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 feet.
You sure it was above 1,000 feet?
Yes, because I had a Cypress. It would have fired.
Oh, okay. I got you. Dude, that's fucking wild, man. In all of the different parachute activities you've done, which there's been quite a few of them,
Yeah.
is there an incident that stands out as being the most close call, pucker factor, almost died moment? Or I'm sure there's a number of them, but is there one that takes the cake?
Yeah, this actually encompasses a chapter in the book. I told this story a few times. I think the first time I told it was on The Fighter and the Kid, and I can skip over most of it so people can listen to it there. But the single worst jumping experience I ever had in my life was in Afghanistan, doing a tandem with an interpreter.
Oh, wow.
And we were not too far from a sovereign nation. My GPS ceased to function. My passenger, who I did not know until we were already airborne, had never been in an aircraft, let alone an aircraft in flight at night. This is full nighttime, 2 O2 bottles, one for him, one for me, rucksack, weapon, the full nine. And when he observed the first people leaving the aircraft, he decided that that was the time to no longer be a part of this evolution. So we fought to get to the ramp. We went out in what I would call a very unstable body position. Thankfully, the guy who actually put me through the tandem program, a guy named Jonesy, was holding on to my drogue. And this is not an uncommon thing. When you jump the bundles, somebody is standing. The drogue is, again, it's a small parachute that is attached to a tether. And that tether then goes all the way down, and it's basically a metal disc that is on your main pack tray. And what it does is it can slow, two bodies can go out. They have the same surface area as one, but double the weight, so it'll fall really, really fast. This tether with the parachute, and you see this on civilian tandem operations, that's why they can have somebody flying next to them videoing, because two people are falling at the speed of one because of that drogue parachute. When that drogue parachute is out, you are kind of suspended vertically. You could spin rapidly on a horizontal plane, but you can't. I have never seen anybody who can go vertically because it's, you know what I mean. You are falling and putting weight on that drogue parachute from above. So when we jump the bundles, you execute a self set, meaning you push a bundle out, you let go, and you reach back and you set your own drogue. Beyond that, most people will have somebody who is holding onto that drogue on the ramp, and they sit there and they hold it until it is physically ripped out of their hands. Thankfully, I had Jonesy doing that for me on that aircraft because I think I got out conservatively 10 seconds after the last jumper. And those airplanes are cooking, and it's per second, it's 100 meters. So every second that goes by, and I'm fighting with this guy, and we go out, and we went out feet first, not optimal at nighttime on nods.
Is he screaming? Like,
I don't know. He had an O2 mask on.
maybe.
Thank God Jonesy set the drogue. I felt it tug. You can feel it. It's because especially when you start have some experiences like jiu-jitsu, you don't even know what the hell is going on when you first start. You mentioned purple belt. You see things that you didn't see before. You feel things you didn't feel. The world opens up. So same thing with skydiving. When you first jump, the very first jump you do, you're like, I have an altimeter on, and that's all you see. Thousands of jump later, you're sitting there thinking like, man, did I set up the transfer for the electrical bill this month? You know what I mean? Other things come into your mind because you have more awareness of what's going on. So I felt the drogue set, meaning it had reached the length of its tether and it had inflated. As soon as I felt that, I reached down and I deployed the main parachute. We were spinning at the time, so we had the canopy open, but we had line twists. With the line twist, though, you can't really control the direction because if you were to pull on one of your toggles, those toggles, they just go up with the rest of your lines, so they're all wrapped up as well. You could actually induce a pretty gnarly dive or a malfunction you might have to cut away from if you were able to like pull on one of those toggles and a good distance came down and then it cinched. You may not be able to stop the turn. So you leave the toggle stowed and you got to get out of this stuff. Mind you, all of this though, I don't know where I am other than over Afghanistan. I can hear other people who are a part of this already on the radio checking in. They're already orienting and flying towards the objective. I don't even know where the fuck I am. So I get those out, and the first thing I try to do is orient myself. I can't see anybody. There's a variety of different ways they can illuminate themselves, especially under night vision goggles. I did a full 360-degree turn. I didn't see any of them. I reached down to try to get my GPS. It had slid in between us. I fired the thing up. It had factory reset. So I swear to this day that we were over Singapore for some reason. This is almost 20 years in the rearview mirror, and maybe this is just my mind playing tricks, but I can tell you for a fact it was factory reset. Still can't see anybody. Passenger reaches up, grabs a toggle, and starts pulling a control toggle, which starts diving the canopy in one direction. So I have to get him to stop doing that. He does it on the other side, stop doing that. While trying to get this GPS, all I can see underneath me is mountains at nighttime. No marking, no idea if I'm headed in the right direction, the wrong direction. I think the only radio call I made was, hey guys, we're not going to make it tonight. I'll hit you up when I was on the ground. And I didn't turn it off, but I just ignored everything else on the radio because there's nothing that was going to help me. I was on my own, not intentionally, but meaning I had to solve the problems that I was dealing with because everybody else was doing their thing and I had to sort it. So eventually got the GPS out, trying to hit the buttons. My gloves are all slippery, trying to figure out why. So I ended up taking my O2 mask off. We were low enough, undoing the Velcro with my teeth, biting it off with my fingers and just spitting my gloves out into space. I start feeling my passenger like going rigid, then relaxing, rigid, then relaxing. Thought we were flying through a cloud, realized he had filled up his O2 mask with vomit and it was just coming out the ejection port and was flying onto me, and that's what was making it slippery on my GPS.
Dude.
Mind you, I had just bit off my gloves that were slippery. Yeah. So gave up on the GPS and just picked a riverbed. And I was a point man for years. I love being a point man. I love navigation. And oftentimes I would celestially navigate for one particular leg. Knowing where the North Star is great, but being able to pick out a constellation, like sweet, for the next 30 minutes, I'm just going to walk at that constellation. I thought about giving that a try under nods. I don't know if you've ever tried this. There's a lot more stars. They're a lot brighter. So none of that worked. So at some point I finally just realized we're going to have to land and I need to pick something out. And it looked like just hills, mountains, and I picked what I thought was the most effective riverbed and landed us in the riverbed. I'm not going to lie, I drove that guy into the ground and rode him like a skid plate on helicopter skids. My body did not touch the ground until after we stopped moving. Unclipped him, got everything else off of me, went up to some high ground, got my gun, got back on comms, got my other GPS up and running, took a deep breath, and then just started coordinating. They pushed an AC-130 over, and then an ODA team, of all things, came out and got us in a truck. That was the worst jumping experience of my life.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit. Like,
There's a lot.
I mean, did that guy...
He quit the next day.
I imagine. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't die of a heart attack midair. I mean, like, or suffocate in his own vomit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, did you interact with him at all after that? Like, were you like, dude, what the fuck? Or, I mean...
I wasn't in the phase yet where I was ready to have that level of conversation. I was still pretty emotionally involved with what was going on. We got back to FOB, and he just fell down on a rack and went to sleep for like 20 hours. And then I think they landed a C-130, or they might have come and picked us up in helicopters, but we made our way back to Bagram. And he was like, yeah, I actually don't like doing this.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that.
I mean, elevation-wise, I mean, how long were you under canopy? Like, how long was that entire...
Felt like about 7 years, realistically.
Half my career or so.
Probably 15 minutes.
Yeah. Do you know when you landed how far you were from where you were supposed to be?
Oh, like 50 kilometers.
No shit.
Oh, yeah, I was flying in the wrong direction, shockingly enough.
Man. I mean, it's amazing that you were able to be recovered and not taken hostage or...
We did not cross any borders. We just invaded a portion of the country that didn't have much going on.
Man. 'Cause that is gnarly.
It was something like this. The guy, Jonesy, who set my drogue, got out even later than I did because he waited until the drogue got snatched. Then he jumped out. So that's probably 15 seconds from the last jumper. We were already laterally separated by 1.5 kilometers.
Yeah.
And he landed off somewhere else by himself. They picked him up as well. Like, it was a proper shit show.
Man, that is crazy. I mean, so I assume that because it was Tandem and the entire shit showedness was derived from having the Tandem passenger. Was that a struggle at all to jump again, or was it like, no, I don't have I don't have this guy with me, so like it's not going through your head?
There's how you want things to go, and then there's how they go sometimes.
Yeah.
You ever had a dog bite you when you didn't want him to?
Every time it's been when I didn't want him to.
I bet you're still training dogs, aren't you? You got to get back on the horse.
Yeah, but I will say, like...
I started asking more questions, like, hey, are you familiar with the theory of flight?
Yeah.
Have you ever been on an airplane?
Man, have you eaten today?
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I've been bit a bunch of times, and
Yeah.
I will say, like, in every instance, it obviously doesn't change my desire to want to do it, but with that particular dog, the next interaction or two is a little more pucker factor and a little bit of unsuredness where I'm even more hyper aware of what I'm doing and what I'm not doing.
Well, I mean, there are lessons learned from everything, success and failures. So in that situation, when we realized that we were going to do the jump, I went to go pack the parachute, and Jonesy actually got the passenger in his harness and briefed the passenger. So we didn't meet until we were on the airplane. I did change that for any future jumps. The meet would be before the aircraft. We would at least talk in an environment where you didn't have to yell over the whine of an aircraft or try to do it over a radio. So there's lessons learned. Yeah. And it's not like, and Jonesy, again, he ran the JSOC Tandem course. He's more qualified than I am to this day to do that type of jumping. So nothing but the utmost trust and faith in him to get the passenger ready to go. Neither of us just ever thought to ask about, like, hey, have you ever been in an airplane? Yeah. But we also didn't meet before. Like, there's a lot of things that we changed to enhance efficiency going forward.
Did you talk with your passenger afterwards? Like, was there ever a point where you confronted him or just said, like, dude, what were you thinking, or any of that?
Not really.
You just washed your
No,
hands?
because, I mean, basically, as soon as the guy woke up, because we were getting recovered to go back to Bagram, by the time we got there, I mean, I had all of my stuff I had to take care of as it was anyway. Yeah. And then I never saw the guy again.
Yeah, wow. That leads me to the 2023 Legacy Expeditions team.
Yep, the 777.
Yeah, 6 days, 6 hours, 6 minutes.
I think that's made up, if I'm being honest, because what are the odds?
666?
Yeah. What are the odds?
Yeah.
But whatever. We were trying to do 7 continents, 7 jumps, 7 continents, 7 days. I didn't have the actual. I started a stopwatch in Antarctica, and then because I'm an idiot, I swiped the app closed. Thankfully, other people smarter than me started one back. That's amazing technology in our pocket, limited by the monkey that's using it, right? I knew that's literally what I needed. I was planning on doing a bunch of video shots with it as we were like flying all over the world. And I'm like listening to music on one of the commercial flights, and you just get in that habit, like, what screens are open? You're like, and I remember I was like, oh, I don't think that's recoverable. But fortunately, just about everybody did. I don't know if he really hit the ground. So the timer started on the first jump when the first jumper's feet hit the ground and ended when the last jumper's feet hit the ground at the last location. I just find it statistically improbable that in our attempt to do 777, we hit it right on the minute 666. Come on.
Yeah. So for those who are completely unaware of what we're talking about, can you give the Reader's Digest of what that was?
Okay, so 2023, we actually started looking at it a year before that. Again, what can you do with the skills that we have from our career? Unless you are in that career, a lot of them have a real shelf life or no applicability to the outside world.
Write books or start drama online. That's
or
a good skill set.
Both.
Yeah, or both. All of the above.
There's actually a lot of research out about, there's a reason that Red Bull, on a lot of Red Bull's pictures, there's blue sky behind things flying through the air. It grabs people's attention. Skydiving is awesome for the person doing it. I'm not so sure how awesome it is for somebody looking at just a picture who's never jumped. But if the research shows they'll stop and take a look at it, what a great way to get people's attention. What do you do with that attention? You could, I guess, try to get some fame and notoriety, or you could try to give back and raise money. So on this particular one, we were working with Folds of Honor, which is an organization based on educational scholarships for Gold Star families, and they've opened it up to first responders as well, which I think is an amazing thing. And not that people hadn't done jumps on 7 continents, but I think the record before was like 6 months, because the person was probably part and parceling the cost of doing it. And what was the rush anyway? I don't even think there was a record before that. So the person was just doing it and maybe just realized they were the first to do it afterwards. So we decided we wanted to smash that record and put it into something that probably wasn't going to be achievable, so it would stay on the board for a bit. So what better than, 7 continents, cool, 7 jumps, 7 days. And then you got to reverse engineer it. How are you going to do that? Oh, and by the way, all commercial airline travel, economy class.
Oh, man.
So we started in Antarctica because that had the most variable weather conditions and was the hardest to access or get out of. And if you're there, I think you're there for a minimum of 7 days. That's just when they have the rotator flights come in and out. And there's a full operation. There's people who are just tourisming down in Antarctica and Union Glacier. It was super cool. Sun never went down. I'm here to report there's no ice wall, alien base, or laser beams that I saw, at least. Perhaps I didn't get taken to the right location for the flat earthers. But we did, Antarctica is where we started, and we hit a fantastic weather window. And the owners of ALE, Antarctica Logistics and Exploration, Mike McDermott, awesome. We got one jump in. We had a weather window like 3 days in. We're like, listen, we're going to do a jump. And worst case scenario, we have the clock started, and we could be here for another 3 days, and it'll end up being 7 continents, 10 days, whatever. Well, there was another window the day we were supposed to leave. And so we packed up all of our stuff, sent everybody over to the ice runway, which is legitimately on blue ice, and an Iceland Air 730, a commercial airliner comes in. Everybody's over there. Then they spun up an otter for us. And we went up and jumped within the hour that the Iceland airplane was supposed to show up. Everybody got out, got on the ground, which restarted our clock. Then we went straight over, and then we were off and running.
Wow.
They were awesome. They totally facilitated what we were trying to do. And so then we went from there to Chile.
Are all the jumps altitude-wise about the same?
Antarctica was the lowest. I think we got out at 10.
Okay.
Which was plenty, because any higher, it just gets colder. And let me just tell you, Antarctica, it's like Dumb and Dumber. Like, I got this extra set of gloves. Yeah, most skydiving operations, you're going to get out at 13.5 AGL. There's some that'll do up to 18. I think actually we did 18 in Australia.
And nothing fancy, just everybody out and
Get out of the plane. Yeah. Get out of the plane, survive, test gravity, and survive. Deploy your parachute, land on the ground, don't get hurt, and let's keep going. So we went from there to Santiago, Chile. Then we went Santiago, Chile to Miami. Miami to Barcelona. Barcelona to UAE. UAE to Cairo. Cairo to Australia. Is that 7? Who knows how many that is? There might be something else in there I forgot.
yeah, it sounds like 7. Yeah.
If that was 6, then we jumped somewhere else in between. I can't. It was years ago.
Yeah. Were there any hiccups jump wise?
Jump wise, no. We landed in Miami. We're getting ready to drive up to the drop zone, and we all got a email from American Airlines. And the day we landed was the first time ever that the FAA NOTAM system went down. So all outbound flights were shut down. So we're like, okay, we'll solve this along the way. And we drove up to the drop zone it was north of Miami. We landed in Miami, but we didn't jump in Miami. We drove up north, and we're just problem solving it. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And what we solved was we have to get a charter aircraft for one leg from where we were over to Barcelona. Put together a plan. Initially, we paid for it ourselves by pooling our money it was well into the 6 figures to pay for it. Then sponsors reached out and covered the cost for us. But we were going to do it out of our own pockets. And originally, the money did come out of our own pockets to pay for it. It was paid back later. But that was the only hiccup travel-wise. We didn't have anybody lose a bag. We didn't have a delayed flight. Like, unbelievable. Because we had the jumpers. Then we had, like, Kirk Parsley was with us. We had a couple of other people. So even just one missed flight, we would have had to rebook 15 people, assuming that they, you know what I mean, that they even had that many seats available on the next plane.
Right. Wow. Were you guys actually staying in any of these locations?
We stayed overnight in UAE and Cairo, only because there was a length of time in between the flights where it made sense to actually just go get some sleep.
Yeah. Or are those 2 nights the only nights that you really slept? Or are you trying to sleep on a plane otherwise? Or
definitely trying to sleep on a plane, which exhaustion helps with. But, oh man, we did not. No, we jumped and then we went back to the airport in Chile, but we didn't stay overnight. We just stayed for a couple hours and got some sleep. We didn't stay in Barcelona. Yeah, I think that was it.
And food-wise, just eating on the go as you go, like.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Airport sushi roulette.
Man, that's wild. What did it end up doing for Folds of Honor?
I never ended up looking at the total, but again, it was a couple $100,000, and their scholarships go out at $5,000 chunks or $7,000 chunks. And I mean, I don't care if we only got one. You know what I mean? I can't think of a more honorable cause than trying to elevate people, and especially those who've been left behind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess in that same vein, hobby-wise, you've also gotten into helicopter piloting.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot that, bringing you up to speed.
Was a similar question. Was there a catalyst to that, or just like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to try to fly a helicopter?
So one of the things I did when I got out of the military, well, actually I got my pilot's license, my private pilot's license, when I moved from Virginia Beach to San Diego. I had some time off, so I went and got my private pilot's license. Let's call it, I had 40 hours. Years later, I was working for CrossFit, and the founder had homes in Santa Cruz, Prescott, and San Diego, which he was driving that triangle. I think each one of those legs is about 8 hours. He wanted to shorten that up, and he called me, and I was surprised that he remembered, actually. He's like, you have your pilot's license, right? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, we're going to look at getting a plane. You can be the pilot, get back into the flying and, you know, training, everything that you would need to do. So I was able to do that, worked my way through a variety of licenses and ratings in both airplanes and jets. So that aviation experience, I kind of shelved after leaving CrossFit. I did a little bit of charter flying for about a year and a half afterwards, then got into the skydiving instruction more because it was more stable. So kind of put that to the side. The licenses are good for life. If you're type rated in a jet, you would need to go back through a recurrency program. But the pilot's license, instrument, multi-engine, all that stuff is good for life. And I didn't know if I was ever going to fly again. I always enjoyed it, but, economically, I could not pay the bills doing that. And I was at an event in Salt Lake City at a guy's house, and he had a helicopter out in his front yard, as you do, I guess. And he was like, "Hey, you want to go for a flight?" And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah, get up front." I was like, "Oh, this is odd. Of the thousands of hours I have in helicopters, this is the first time I've been up front." So I get up there, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll let you fly." I'm like, "Oh, okay, but you probably should turn it on and take off because I don't know how to fly a helicopter." It was maybe a 20-minute flight. We went down south, went around one of the temples, and came back up. Man, it was cool. And it was interesting. And not in that moment did I tell myself, hey, I want to get back into aviation. But it definitely sparked some interest. And then I looked at the flight schools and where I live in Kalispell, and lo and behold, there was a flight school, Red Eagle Aviation. And they had a fixed wing and a rotary wing school. So I went over there. I was like, guys, what does this look like? What does this usually take? This, that, or the other. And I was like, screw it. And again, like I said earlier, I love finding new things to learn. I really do think it is part of the key to youthfulness. So the cool thing was all the knowledge tests that I had taken, fixed wing, they all counted. So when I got to go in and do a helicopter lesson, it was all helicopter stuff. I didn't have to learn how to fly or talk on the radio or understand airspace. We could literally just sit down and be like, this is helicopter stuff, and for the next hour, we'll do helicopter stuff. And for me, I learn better when I immerse myself. So I did as many lessons as possible, as consistently as possible, and just worked my way into never having flown a helicopter to now flying a helicopter. I try not to go more than 3 or 4 days without flying.
Do you have one? Is that one?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, how does that work for like maintenance and upkeep and whatever? Like, is it a total motherfucker to maintain a helicopter?
Fortunately, everything in aviation is cheap.
Big time.
I am not a mechanic. So the helicopter I have is an MBB BO-105. It is the same.
Oh, one of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Red Bull helicopter?
Yeah.
Same manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
Theirs is I believe it's the C or Charlie model, the civilian model. Mine is the P model, which is actually a German anti-tank helicopter. It flew in the German military.
Wow.
There are people who are super high-level mechanics on those. I happened to get introduced by the person who gave me my type rating in that helicopter to literally the most qualified mechanic on Earth in the 105 platform. He lives just north of me.
Oh, wow.
So he comes down and does the maintenance. He just finished the annual so I have another year's worth for an annual inspection, and then we're on a 50-hour interval, and he'll come down and check it out.
Yeah. And from what I understand, leasing in helicopter ownership is pretty common.
I don't have enough experience to say yes or no on that. What I think is common is you'll see a group of people coming in together on it, and maybe that is a lease, or I don't know how they necessarily structure the deal. But yeah, just what you see on the internet from some people and the reality of whether or not they own it's the same like with boats or cars. You know what I mean? Like, do you own this thing or did you just rent it for the photo shoot?
Yeah.
There's a mix of both. And I am aware of people out there who lease, but they flex like they own. And then there's people out there who own stuff and never post a single thing about it.
Yeah. Of all of the hobbies that you do, is there one that you spend the most time doing?
Aviation is, you need to be current and competent in aviation, but that doesn't take an immense amount of time. I'll go fly for an hour twice a week, something like that. There's pre and post flight stuff like that. Jiu-Jitsu is kind of the same thing. You can lose your currents and competency. I mean, it all is. Public speaking, taking a couple months off doing podcasting stuff, you kind of just lose your rhythm, or, like just the comfort in the saddle. It's spread out pretty evenly, actually.
Yeah. So I guess kind of rounding out the hobby stuff, where you live is one of the most ideal destinations, like camping, hiking, RV, vanning, boondocking, whatever. Is that something that you do living up there, or is that more like it's kind of part of your life?
I mean, I definitely explore the backcountry when we're hunting, but
you know the saying, look good, feel good? Well, most dress clothes only get half of that right. They may look sharp, but they're stiff, hot, and a pain to deal with. That's why I'm a big fan of Mizzen and Main. They make classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. Now, full disclosure, Mizzen and Main sent me a few shirts to try out for my honest opinion, and I've been wearing them nonstop. They're lightweight, breathable, moisture-wicking, wrinkle-resistant, and completely machine washable. No ironing, no dry cleaning, just throw it on and go. Whether I'm traveling, recording, or out training dogs, these shirts move with me and still look clean and crisp. You feel the difference the second you put one on. Professional style that's actually comfortable. So here's the deal. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering listeners 20% off of your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com, promo code MicDrop20. That's MIZZEN and MAIN.com, code MicDrop20 for 20% off. If you'd rather shop in person, you can also find Mizzen and Main stores in select states.
I'm not a huge hiker. Of the arguments my wife and I have gotten into, one of them may or may not revolve around her telling us we were going on a short hike that wasn't. I never don't appreciate the beauty, though. I mean, it is.
But you live in it.
You live in it, but still, it's easy to not appreciate it or lose your appreciation for it. Sometimes it still stops me dead in my tracks. Like right now in the winter, we've had a really weird winter. We actually got some good snow, and then we had a flood warning last week and got an ungodly amount of rain. Got rid of most of the snow, but there's that western aspect of the eastern range, just east of Kalispell. And when that gets snow coated and then the sun is going down, the alpenglow, where it's just like pink, orange, like if that doesn't stop you in your tracks,
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you.
That place is magic, no doubt about it. I mean, one of my favorite places in the country is Glacier.
Yeah.
And that whole area is that, you know, I mean, it's such a beautiful place. I love it up there. Again, it's been 8 years since you've been on. The last time you were on, we did spend quite a bit of time going through your military service. So I'll just encourage people to watch episode 10. I am curious, just as kind of an alibi, is there anything from your service in the last 8 years that you didn't share or that you've thought about that has entered into your life from a reflection standpoint, a lesson learned, a thing you wish you would have done different, anything like that that has taken place in the last 8 years that you didn't share the first time?
For sure, and I would say it was relatively recently, but it was the realization that almost everybody thinks the experiences that we had in the military because of our job are unachievable for them. And then they think also because they could never have the experiences that they could never do something with the lessons that we learned from those experiences. And I would say probably over the last 2 years, the biggest thing I want to do in my life is to try to figure out a way to take those experiences that most people think are completely unachievable. And I guess from mathematically, they are, because most people have no interest in doing the job that we did. And that's fine. It'll save them a lot of hard work and suffering, quite frankly. But it is to take those experiences that I had and try to make an impact in somebody else's life with them. Because otherwise, what is the point of everything that we did? Did it change my life? Yes. But do I live my life by myself? No. I want my kids to have an understanding of the things that I learned. I see people in everyday life and on social media struggling. And sometimes that's me too. I still struggle. I'm not superhuman. I struggle as well. But there are concrete things that we learned in that profession that can help people in everyday life. And I want to figure out a way to pass those along.
Yeah. Would you say the book that you wrote is a synopsis of that?
It was my attempt at it, for sure. It was my attempt at trying to... The book itself is probably more about mistakes than anything, which is where I have learned in my life the majority of my most concrete lessons. I learned far more from mistakes than I do successes, and I've probably had more mistakes than successes. But again, it's through the lens of, for whatever reason, right, on the flag behind you is a trident. if you have one of those, people will listen to you even if they shouldn't sometimes. And it opens doors that it shouldn't. We're not all the same people. We're not all good people. And people can judge me however they want, whether they think I'm a good person or not. So I leave that up to the judgment of others. But you can also do something amazing with that experience if they are willing to listen to you. Help them. And I don't want to live a rich life full of experiences that only impacted me. Why not push that downstream? Push it downhill.
So you were kind enough to sign and give me a galley copy, which is going to be worth something because it's before the pre.
I think right now it's worth $2.99. Well, and there's a period after the $2.
To me, it's priceless. But called Drownproof. You got Joe Rogan wrote an amazing blurb for you, as well as Jocko. And
Jocko did the forward.
And a lot of praise for the book. I am curious, just in the same kind of line of questioning that I've had thus far, what made you decide to write it? Because obviously the SEAL community in books is pretty synonymous, not in a particularly good way. I don't know.
Are there a lot?
I heard that. I wouldn't know.
I can't name a single SEAL author.
Yeah, me either. But, obviously, like, there's been quite a few over the years. I don't know that I've ever seen you be an advocate or an opponent of doing it, but...
Oh, I've been an opponent. I've talked a lot of shit about people who write books.
Well,
I mean, don't get me wrong. It was good-natured, and oftentimes I just default to talking shit about things. I never in a million years thought I would write a book. And you'll love this one, because if people haven't picked up the theme thus far, I kind of fall...
Change your mind?
No, I fall into things that are generally not my idea. So, I'm good friends with Mike Glover.
He was just on last Monday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And he is a published author. And he pitched to me the idea. He was like, listen, here's the book. We'll pick some topics. It's kind of similar to like maybe themes that could help people in their life. And I'll write my thoughts on it from the Green Beret perspective through my experiences. You write your thoughts on your perspective through the SEAL lens. He's like, I don't know if that book's ever been done, but let's do it. And then we'll figure out a way. Maybe one of the fonts is italicized. Maybe one of, you know what I mean? We'll figure out a way so people can tell the different voices. I'm like, okay, that actually seems interesting to me. I'll do this. So I started working away on it. And we set a date for where we're going to come together with our test chapter.
I already know where this is going.
Yes, you do. Not everybody had their test chapter. Yeah. But Mike, because he had published a book before, had already linked up with somebody whose job was to create book pitches. And we had already paid for him. And so I sent the guy what I had written on Mike's suggestion. And the guy said, yeah, I think I can do something with this. So he made a pitch, a PDF document. I think it was 8 or 9 pages. Thankfully, there are people out there who can do this, because I'm not visually creative like this. And the document was great. Honestly, it probably oversold the book. There's a very good chance that the pitch document is better than the book itself. And
like most movie previews nowadays.
Probably. And found an agent, and I think Mike found the agent as well too. Gave the pitch deck to her, and St. Martin's Press picked it up. And I had continued to write. I enjoyed the process. Actually, the first thing that I ever did after the military in the social media world or the public spectrum was a blog. And I really enjoyed writing. It was the only class that I really enjoyed in high school, of which I barely graduated. Because not that I wasn't intellectually capable of doing it, I was completely and wholly disinterested. I knew I wanted to be a SEAL. I just like, I don't care about calculus. Sorry. So I really liked English, though, and I had a great English teacher. So I started writing a blog, aptly named Confessions of an Idiot. And I mean, two of the posts I wrote ended up getting read on the floor of Congress.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I enjoyed that. And so after I wrote I just kept writing, because I kind of had an idea of, we had kicked around like, we'll do this, like a couple of the topics, right? I had a light, maybe like a shadow of a skeleton of what we were going to do. So I just kept going. By the time the book got picked up, I think I had about 45,000 words already written. I think it netted out at 77,000.
Wow.
So I had another couple months to finish it off. But I actually really enjoyed the process. I didn't find it to be hard. I wrote when I wanted to write. I didn't write when I didn't want to write. For me, I vomit stuff out and then I go back and I scalpel it away. It's just an easier way for me to get that out there. And then, yeah, holy cow, the editing reviews. Oh my God. The editing passes, I didn't realize how much of an idiot I am. I'm like, okay,
it's humbling.
Apparently that word is always supposed to be pluralized. I did not realize that. That's how you use a semicolon? Yeah. Noted.
It's a good thing I'm not an English teacher.
So I think it went through 4 editorial passes and legal review and all that stuff. And I'm really thankful those people exist.
Yeah. I found that in my case, by the end of it, I was actually sick of my own book. Like I kind of hated it almost.
I got to a place in the edits that I got worried. I had changed it so much that I was changing it now back to its original.
Yeah.
I had lost myself in the process. And I mean, honestly, I could look at that and probably completely change it and be like, God, I hate that sentence. But I also realized I was never going to get to a place where I was totally happy with it. So I had to, at some point, just hand it over.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have anybody help you with the writing portion of it? Like no...
Well, a guy named Mr. Word.
Yeah. I mean, no ghostwriter or anything like that?
I wrote everything in there except for, obviously, the blurbs and the foreword,
yeah.
Which Jocko was super nice. He clearly made things up about me that were flattering.
Joe Rogan blew you sideways?
I met that guy for the first time being on his show with Tate Fletcher, and it was around the Wingsuit jump. It was shortly after that when we were still fundraising. And then I did the second time on his show by myself, and we became friends. I have no way to pay him back or thank him appropriately for being even willing to write like I said, he wrote like 3 paragraphs that were like incredibly personal, and you could tell that he wrote it and he put the time into it. And then, like, again, I was telling you, he's going to have me on the 13th of April, which is the day before the book comes out. He's going to release the episode on the 14th, which I feel like is probably going to help
for sure
get the word out. And it's like, Joe,
yeah, thanks isn't enough.
Yeah,
how do you say?
Do you have somebody you need like killed? Like,
no shit, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So the book is Drownproof. I will be releasing kind of us talking about it, right around that same first week that the book comes out. But it is available for pre-order. I encourage you to check it out. I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you bringing me.
Of course,
for sure. I am curious the process. I mean, the Joe Rogan podcast since the inception of podcasts has been the gold standard. Continues to be. What would you be willing to share just kind of what that experience is like?
The best way I can describe it is he is exactly the same off air as he is on. I've been fortunate enough to spend time with him completely away from a podcast studio environment. He's just Joe.
Yeah.
He's super cool.
Did anything surprise you about it?
You feel the weight of his audience when you go into the room.
Like right away?
I didn't the first time because
Really?
I had never listened to a podcast before I went on his show. That was a mistake. I would have changed a few of my answers.
In what way?
We ended up talking about Guantanamo Bay and what we should do with the people that were in Guantanamo Bay.
And you thought you were sitting around a campfire.
I said we should probably kill all of them.
Really?
The ones that were guilty or had been radicalized.
Do you still feel that way?
I would let them out first and then kill them so they died free men. No, that's a tough... The conversation was more, what should we do with somebody who found themselves there, unfortunately, that wasn't radicalized, that had nothing to do with it, but then they were there for 5 years and they are leaving one of the most radicalized people on the face of planet Earth. What do you do? Because I only know one solution that solves that problem.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of people's stomach uneasy, and I understand that. But when confronted with absolute pure evil, I don't know a way to stop it other than turning the lights off.
Yeah. It's an interesting prospect and one that I'd love to get your perspective on. I've had quite a few guys over the last 8 years, as have you, sit across from me that have participated in enduring and Iraqi freedom. And as we look back now, 20 years in the rear, there's a lot of things that have come to light that have, I guess we've kind of realized both individually and collectively as a nation, as a Department of Defense, the Afghanistan withdrawal has taken place since the last time you're on. A lot of things, I think, post-Iraq war have kind of, I don't know that I'd say come to light, but have been realized in terms of why we were there. And it's 8 years of being able to see, was it worth it is easier to answer, I think, now. And when you look at both of those campaigns kind of, in their entirety, do you see, or do you find yourself kind of thinking that was a mistake?
Do I think the campaigns were a mistake? Afghanistan, of the two, I would say is definitely the most legitimate for reasons why we ended up over there. There's a whole conversation about whether or not we should have stayed for 20 years. Iraq, I think the data is pretty resounding that a bill of false goods was sold, and they probably were looking at that maybe even before Afghanistan, maybe even before 9/11. Perhaps some war hawks in politics that were looking for a reason, any reason, and they may not have had an entry point into it, but when that happened and 9/11 happened and then Afghanistan, they saw a chance to dust off maybe an old 3-ring binder and pull that sucker out. So I think we should 100% as a society, with the most critical lens possible, dissect the decisions made to enter into those two campaigns. But the mistake that is often made in that, or the jump that is made in that, is that people then start looking at their own service during that campaign and start saying things like, what was it all for? Why? Did I waste my time? And the reality is, from every person that I know that was in either of those theaters or in any theater of war, probably since the inception of war, is doing the best that they can. And they probably weren't involved in the decision-making process of whether or not they were deployed there or not. And so I think you have to separate the two. I think as a veteran, you can 100% criticize and objectively look at the decision makers that sent you to war without diminishing your role in that and the effort you put in.
Do you think that there's any part of that perspective almost being a self-preservation of mental health, of not wanting to even entertain the prospect that it was a complete waste of your time?
I don't think it was a waste of my time.
Do you think that there's any influence of that perspective from it, of people not wanting to even consider that it might have been?
I think in general, people are often hesitant to maybe look at things that would diminish either their role in something or their time or whatever it may be. I mean, the job that we had was very specific and it was very targeted. And my N on experience in life is 1, so I can only talk about my own experiences. I don't know if I made the world a better place. I don't know if I made it a more dangerous place, but I know the reasons that I was there. I know who I am, and I know how much I cared about the people that I was with, and I cared about the people that I was with far more than I hated the people that we were fighting. And to be honest with you, I didn't hate the people we were fighting. I have respect for people who put their toe on the line in an arena like that. Whether I diametrically oppose their beliefs or not, you got to respect the fact that they're willing to throw down for you.
Agreed. Yeah. And to be clear, I don't share or I guess I don't have that perspective that it was a waste at an individual level. I think it's important to at least look at it from that perspective and try to stay as objective as possible, which can be hard to do.
Well, all I can control is the individual level.
Yeah. I
wasn't invited to the meetings, nor should I have been, because I was an E5 at the time. And I would have said, make sure we bring Skittles. That would have been.
You have gummy bears in your E&E kit?
Yeah. And so it's so easy to lose your individual efforts in a collective that you had nothing to do with when it came to you actually ending up in that place.
Have you had anybody on your show or even not on the show, but just, casual conversation with any of the people who were in those rooms about that?
Not at the highest level and not at the level that I would want to. Like, my apex of being able to sit down and talk with somebody on a podcast would be George Bush Jr.
Yeah.
I would love to know, and I feel like at some age they'd be much more open to talking about those situations. And the farther they get away from when it happened, I think they'd be more likely to be able to do so.
Do you mean W or his son?
W.
Yeah.
No, his son. Junior, the guy, George Bush Jr. Isn't he the one who was president when 9/11?
Yeah. So there's HW or senior, but now there's like several other George Bush thirds or whatever. You're saying the 43rd president.
I don't know what number he was.
Yeah,
I'm assuming
George W.
The one who was
the president.
Yes,
Yeah,
at the school when the.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to meet him. Was it last year, I think, and spent about 2.5 hours getting to talk with him in his office. I don't think that you'd see any different position, at least right now. Maybe 10 years from now, that it would be different. I don't think that the perspective and kind of the opinion that he had even in 2003 is at odds with the way that it is now. I could be wrong.
Number 2 on the pyramid is Colin Powell.
Yeah.
Because I think he might have some thoughts.
Maybe
we want to talk about
Condoleezza
somebody
Rice.
who was the main salesman for Iraq.
Yeah. Well, I think Condoleezza Rice, too, would be a good person to put into that category, too. But it is frustrating to see, what's taken place since then. And I think even more so than just Iraq itself, but on a broader scale, the region. I'm curious if you share the opinion that I have, which is, the vacuum that is Iraq. Obviously, you can look at it now, and it's pretty tough to argue that it's in a better place. There's some people that maybe would, but I think the grand scale of everything that's happened there, it's tough to make the case that it's better off now than it was 20 years ago. But I think even further than that, when you reach outside the scope of Iraq itself, the entire region, in particular the influence of Iran, and the influence that Iran has had regionally or even globally since Iraq is now not their number one problem, has grown exponentially to a degree with which I think it's hard to even measure. Most specifically the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. It's no coincidence, I don't think, that starting in around 2003, 2004, those three organizations skyrocketed in terms of their ability to train, to be equipped, to operate freely within the region, and the problems that has caused. Again, this even completely outside of Iraq, I think the region destabilization that's taken place because of our involvement there has been astronomically undervalued.
I think there's 2 major issues. I think the first one is most Americans struggle to think beyond 4-year terms. And the U.S. military is good at breaking things, not putting them back together.
Yeah.
Those 2 things combined can be a problem.
Yeah. In that same type of, realm of involvement, you see, the Israel-Palestine, Hamas fiasco, we'll call it, as well as Russia-Ukraine. Do you take the same approach of whether or not the U.S. should have any involvement to either of those places as you do of, in particular, Iraq?
At this point, looking back now, I think that involvement in any type of warfare had better be a measure of absolute last resort. And if we didn't learn from both Afghanistan and Iraq that the planning for how you exit is also equally as important as the planning on how you would enter, then we have no business participating in anything until we can sort that.
I don't disagree at all. Do you have a red line for you personally in terms of the catastrophe on a genocidal or religion or whatever level you want to talk about when you see things that are taking place in sub-Saharan Africa or even there's a number of places all over the globe that are equally troubling to what's going on in Gaza and in Ukraine. Is there a point at which for you personally you think just on outrage and the devastation of that population alone warrants our involvement? Is there a level, or is it only existential to the way of life in the United States?
It's tough, right? I think that ties in a little bit to the argument about the defunding or potential defunding of USAID, which, that entity and organization, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a scholar in this stuff, but that is soft influence, if you will. around the globe, largely through money. And yes, there are 100% entities and organizations that were gaming that, and money that was going to places that shouldn't have been going to. And yeah, guess what? There's intelligence agencies that are tied into that and that are doing backdoor funneling. Like, it's horrible, the amount of money that was likely wasted in that. But is that our way that we can soft influence areas around the world, or one of the ways that we can without directly involving with boots on the ground? I don't know how to answer where the red line is, because I do want our country to be a beacon. But are we always going to be viewed as a beacon with a baseball bat? Is that what we always want to be? And I don't have it. I mean, there are people who would probably say yes, and there are people who say no. And I haven't spent enough time thinking about it to say where I 100% land on that. But I think we need to have the ability for, we'll call it hard influence and soft influence. I mean, they have to both work together. And at the same time, we also can't forget our own issues that we have going on in our own country, you know? And so can we be so externally focused that internally we're falling apart? Yeah. And I think, so that's where it gets so difficult, because people will say, we can't solve all the world's problems. And to a degree, yep, that's true. But we also shouldn't ignore all the world's problems. Okay, so we'll try to solve them all. Okay, but we got problems here in our own country. We can't ignore those either. I'm like, yep, that's, you know what I mean? So like, where does the answer land on that? It's like a three-legged chair, which is never going to, or a two-legged chair that's never going to totally balance correctly. I think the answer is somewhere in between. What does it say about you if you sit back? So again, we'll go back to the 40s, like, why did these countries come together to stop Hitler? Because they saw what was going on. There was a red line in the sand, whatever it may be. So that has to exist for sure. I couldn't tell you with specificity exactly where mine is at, because I think it needs to be a balance of soft and hard influence.
I think where it becomes tricky, at least for me, in terms of, agreeing with the justification of involvement, is no different than, say, Russia's involvement in helping a lot of the Afghanistan insurgency as it relates to us combating them. There was, a number of proven instances where they were supplying and training and whatever. As
we were doing the same to them when they were in Afghanistan.
Same thing with, Iran and
totally
against us in Iraq. So, there's a component of, I think, from an American perspective, of viewing that as bordering on an act of war. And so similarly, if we're outfitting Ukraine to the degree which we have, which is a disgusting amount, it's hard to not put yourself in Russia's shoes and say, you guys are tinkering on an act of war by, you're killing, you're essentially responsible for the killing of Russian soldiers by what you're helping the country with. And
you're providing them the mechanism to do so.
Right. And so where do you decide?
Man, that is, I'm glad there's people out there in the world smarter than myself, because I don't have an answer
for it. Are they, though?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it, I guess, to me.
I walk around usually with what I would consider to be like an IQ that you would see on a thermostat. That's what I'm aiming for on a daily basis.
Yeah. Here in Texas in the summertime, I hope, at least.
I know it should be at 72 to 75 maximum in the summertime.
I guess, to me, that's giving the representatives in Washington who have shown us time and time again.
What are you talking about? How so?
That either they're not smarter, or they actually are smart and they're just very underhanded.
They might be smart, but I think their incentives are just not aligned. You can be really intelligent, but if you are wasting all of your time elsewhere and your incentives are not aligned, I think at this point in time, it seems like most people in Washington, their incentive is to stay in Washington and not serve the people that they actually were elected by to be in there. And there is that misalignment. I mean, what's the stat? 60 to 80% of the time a senator or congressman spends is on re-election?
Yeah.
What? What are you talking about? How about this? How about you get 2 terms maximum and you don't have to worry about that, because you're not supposed to make this an occupation.
Agreed.
How
do you fix that, though? Because
they have to vote against their own interest.
Yeah, which is never going to happen.
But that begs the question, though, how far does the public tolerate that? And if it gets to a point where they don't anymore, what does that look like? Because I don't think you would find an average American that thinks term limits is a bad idea at this point. Or maybe for the point in time that you are in office, you don't get to trade on the stock market.
That brings me to a next question, I guess. Since it's front of mind, Shawn Ryan recently received a formal demand letter from attorneys representing Dan Crenshaw, the congressman from here in Texas. When you see a letter like that, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
So I know Dan. I put Dan through buds.
Really?
Yeah. And then he had two eyes.
Do you remember him from then?
I do. Yeah, he was one of the officers in the class. He was in the class that I proctored.
Oh, wow.
And we served at Team 3 together afterwards, not directly. I have met Shawn one time. It was at a Tucker Carlson Christmas party. We have texted back and forth a few times, but I just was like, hey, just put a name to a face. That's the only interaction I've had with him. I haven't spoken with Dan in years, but I know Dan. I would say I consider Shawn to be, I would say he's a friend, or at least friendly, but just so putting it out there, this is where I view this from in my own personal experience with both of those. If it were me, I would not handle it in that manner. But I'll put you and I in this situation. You are, of course, the politician because you're crooked, right?
I appreciate that.
I am the podcaster because that's what I do. There is not a SEAL or ex-SEAL that I could think of that I couldn't get their phone number in 1 or 2 phone calls or text messages. And I would handle it directly. That is what I would do, and that is how I would handle it. I do not think that bringing excess publicity to this situation helps anything or anybody. And I respect Shawn for the decision that he made, because I would make exactly the same one. Dan, whether he likes it or not, is a public official, and people questioning his wealth, the amount of money that he makes, his behavior, what he does with his money and his investments, even if they are all above board, that's part of the job, dude. And you signed up for it once, and you have run for re-election multiple times. You're currently running re-election right now. Those are the rules of the game that you play by. If you don't like that, play a different game. If you want to keep playing that game, stop bitching about people asking legitimate questions.
I agree. I mean, and so I guess from that same perspective, where do you think that fix comes in to be able to question, a sitting congressman and say, hey, you came in, you were worth this.
Yep.
You make 174 a year, and now you're worth this.
It starts with people like Shawn saying no.
You've
publicly.
got to explain that.
Yep. It starts with people who have a voice and a platform. When presented with that opportunity, they hold their ground.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I'm curious, do you think that Dan will actually go on his show?
I hope so. I wish they would let me moderate it.
Yeah? How would you do it?
I think more than anything, you force it to stay on topic. Because with 2 people in the room, like, we could go down a rabbit hole, but somebody else in the room keeping track of where the line of questioning began, because you're like, you cork off into space. It's like, okay, put a pin in that. Let's come back to the question, right? Have you ever heard of Gavin Newsom?
No. Who's that?
So
he's the master at not answering the question. And
I was just going to say, he is spectacular at being able to take a question and take you where he wants to go. If you get somebody in a room whose job it is to not allow that to happen, but also, and so Shawn, Dan, and myself, we all have kind of the same background. It's like, listen, let's just start with this baseline level of respect. I'm here to keep this on track. Let's go. Because I don't want it to, not that Dan is Gavin Newsom, but if I'm looking at somebody who is literally an expert at weaving conversations to where they want to go, he comes to the top of the list.
Yeah.
That dude can talk and debate his ass off.
No, for sure. I mean, to me, I can see it going sideways very quickly, the same way you can. And
I think they should have a neutral person in the room. I think it would help. I take that back. It's Shawn's platform. He is immensely successful. I couldn't be more stoked for the guy and proud of what he has built. I think that particular conversation, especially since there might be some emotions in play on that one, would probably serve better by having a neutral party in the room.
Do you think you would be a neutral enough party?
Yeah, because the reality is I only care about the truth.
Yeah.
And I have those same questions of Dan.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I have nothing but respect for Shawn's response to that legal letter. That's how I would want somebody to respond that feels that way. So I don't actually have any skin in the game. And the reality is this: if they have that meeting and if it gets off the rails, it will just make the community look even worse. The best way that could go is for it to stay on the rails, to stay on topic, to stay on point. The best way I think it could have gone is like, dude, if we're going to say the brotherhood means something and team guys, this, that, or the other, then call the guy in a non-public manner and deal with it directly. That's what we used to do. That's what we used to tell each other that we need to do. That's how we handle our issues. It's like, maybe just do that.
Yeah. What do you think the outcome of all of this will be?
Oh, God. I think I think the Cinderella effect, or not, it's not the Cinderella effect. It's the, what's the one where you're now bringing more attention to an issue than you would have hoped to, or if you would have kept your mouth shut, less people would have seen it. It starts with a C. I think more people are now looking at what was said and maybe even potentially Dan's finances than were before. I think he brought more attention to the issue in an attempt to silence the issue. And that's probably not what he was aiming for, is my guess. I don't know how it ends, other than maybe they have the conversation, maybe they don't, but I think there's more eyeballs on it now than there ever have been.
Yeah, I mean, and to that, I think, it's trying to find the maybe a fine line between protecting your reputation and silencing your scrutiny, which I don't think Dan has done a good job doing.
Yeah.
Because to your point, I think trying to silence it versus just coming out and being like, hey, books are open, here's how I did it.
Yeah.
Like the more you try to sue people to tell them to shut up, like it just makes you look like you're guilty.
Yeah, from a court of public opinion optic, for sure. And that's a tough one once you get on the wrong side of that.
It's tough to get that back.
To get your favor back in that, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have an opinion without any more knowledge than you have of whether or not he's made money via insider trading?
I have no knowledge. I know that, one of the stats that was pulled up, I think it was either by Shawn or Tucker. I think it was either year 23 or 24, but he had a 63%, year over year increase. So I'm not going to, here's what I'll say. I'll make no accusations of insider trading. What I'll say is the average return on the S&P 500 is 8 to 10%. Your average money manager on Wall Street would be jumping up and down to hit 8 to 10% per year. How is it that there is a cohort of people, elected officials, that seem to very frequently, at a statistically anomalous level, exceed the average return of very educated, very sophisticated investors year over year over year?
That's all they do, by the way.
Who that's all they do. They probably went to school to do that. They have mentors. Is that accidental? I think it is improbable, bordering on impossible, that is accidental. Do people in politics, especially at certain levels, get access to information that the rest, you and I, don't have access to? Yes, they absolutely do. The problem is that there's no real mechanism to determine what they do with that information. But, let's just look at the math. Just explain the math to me. I won't make any accusations as long as you can draw for me the breadcrumbs of how you are able, like Pelosi, and this, of course, it's not Pelosi, it's actually her husband who's the phenomenal trader, who I don't believe has a robust dossier and experience of trading. How? She, on that same chart where Dan was at 60%, I think she was at 143%. Like, what? Almost 20x? Or 15x what somebody who literally it is their profession, and then you look at the years before and you're always multiples of that. Like, why do we tolerate that? And that's the bigger question for me, is why do we tolerate this?
Well, I agree. So I would kick that back to you and say, how do you not tolerate it? Like, what could we as a collective society do?
The laws would have to be changed, but then you have to look at who's going to be voting on those laws.
But let's say hypothetically, like best case scenario, that there's enough grumblings and bitching from...
No trading while you're in office.
Okay, so again, like let's say that
Yep.
we somehow managed to get to that point, right? Just like with Pelosi has her husband do it, you know, Congressman X, okay, well, I'm going to feed it to my cousin. He's going to set up a trust and an LLC.
I think there's ways to catch people doing that. And then when you do, you need to make an example out of them. You know, a good analogy I heard one time, and somebody asked me, he goes, do you know why you kill a fly with a hammer sometimes? And I said, no.
I never have.
Yeah, never have. Didn't think about that. And he said, it's not because it makes them more dead. It's because the other flies pay attention. So maybe we start putting some teeth into these things and holding people accountable and make the punishment to the point where, I'm not going to engage in that. But let's make politics what it's supposed to be, service of those you were elected by. You have a limited amount of time. We'll pay you a commensurate salary, but you don't get to trade, period. Hard stop.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just don't know how to get to that place. I mean, we both know people who, you know, have been sitting here just like you and I and are now sitting behind the confines of a congressional office. Nothing's changed.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how to explain that. You know, it's like if there were a group of people that I would hope could go from where we're sitting right now to the halls of the fucking Congress.
Yeah.
And actually do something to fix it, it would be our kind of guys.
I don't think they can do it by themselves. I think you need a massive changeover of the old guard. I mean, this is another thing I think people forget about, you know, this 4-year cycle where which again, we're getting ready to start probably in 2026. Are you super pumped for your 2028? I mean, dude, it's going to happen.
It's already.
Probably Feb 2026.
Yeah.
Like, yay.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear about this for the next 2 years. We vote for such a vast minority of people that are actually entrenched in the government. And that's where the real power brokers exist. On the officer side, I'll leave her name out of it, but there was a woman detailer who had been the detailer since the admirals were ensigns. And the active duty service member would come in for 24 months, right? And so who was the real power broker in that? The active duty officer that's working there with the detailer, or the woman who has sticky notes on the admiral from when they were an ensign and help that person chart their trajectory along the way? That is a great analogy to power brokers inside of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
You maybe talked to the officer, but if you really wanted to throw the levers, who do you talk to? You talk to that lady.
So, like, who do you think those people actually are, though? Like, completely unknown?
There's staff members that are probably 1 or 2 layers deeper, and they're probably at a large portion of the departments that, you know, they've been there for 20, 30 years. And I'm not saying that they don't have a massive amount of experience and that we should just clean house every 4 years. But I also don't think that we should confuse the person who's sitting in the Oval Office as the one who actually wields the ultimate amount of power. Because there are plenty of examples, and I'm sure if you dove deep enough, it's been, I mean, imagine even at a SEAL team. Let's say you're in a platoon and your OIC is just a turd. And he gives you some guidance that you don't agree with, and neither did any of the boys. Do they hop to and do the best job they can? No. They drag their feet. They delay it. They do the absolute minimum to keep that guy off their back. You're telling me that's not happening in government? So at layers underneath just the Oval Office and his cabinet, it's 100% happening. I don't know how to solve that problem, but I think unless we take a realistic view of how our government, the size, the scope, and scale of it, and how it actually functions, we're totally kidding ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I guess that the bitch of all of that is that, you know, as a citizen, I think most citizens want to have some understanding as to a plan forward. Hey, what can we do about this? Because the whole premise behind a fair and free election is that you're putting people in office that represent you, and it just doesn't feel that way at all.
You got to make lobbying illegal?
Yeah. I don't know how it's not, but again, I guess it's the same thing. I mean, expecting it to become
What do you mean you don't know how it's not? The people that would have to vote to make it illegal are the recipients.
No, that's what I mean. Like, I mean, the same way I don't know how it's not illegal to trade, you know, when you're sitting on intel briefings that, you know, a handful of people in the country have access to. And
then it's like, how do you prove insider trading if the briefing you were in was classified?
Yeah, it's impossible, you know. And
again, it's like, let's just go to math. Yeah. Can we just do math? Let's just do math.
Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett, arguably in the last 50 years, is the most competent and proven track record, successful investor in this country.
I mean, not really. He hasn't hired Pelosi's husband.
Well, that's true.
That would be the move, right?
Yeah. I mean, shit, if you just mirror whatever they do, if
That's why they have the Autopilot app.
Yeah.
It's an investment app that tracks politicians' investments. There is a Pelosi tracker, and there is a Crenshaw tracker.
Really?
And there are many others, yes.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of a lag. I think they have 30 to 45 days. People are up in arms because Pelosi is leaving in 2027.
Well, I noticed that there was a pretty short window between like a legitimate kind of pseudo investigation into some more of the insider trading claims and her announcing retirement. Like it was a very close together decision between when that was announced and when she announced that she was retiring. I'm curious if...
I mean, she is 147.
Yeah, well,
So,
that's true.
Interesting thing too, she is in her late 80s, I think. And I wonder, do you even have time left to enjoy the money?
No, I can't imagine. I don't think it's even about that for her. No different than take a guy like Bezos, like, at that level, like, do you need to keep working and try to make money? It's not even about the money. It's about the game and the win. And
I was just listening to the Ethan Hawke episode on Rogan and on the way over here, and he was talking about the same thing, that billionaires probably don't need to work anymore.
Yeah.
But they just keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're addicted to,
Their number is more.
Yeah. There's never enough. Back to Crenshaw, the last question I have on him. I'm curious, why do you think he continues to get into it with fellow team guys? Like, because this has happened a number of times.
That's a good question. I don't know, especially given what he does for a living. There's no upside. Why do people choose to participate in things that clearly have no upside? Is he getting bad counsel? And I don't mean legal, but like, is his circle that he's around, they're like, yeah, man.
Do you know anybody that is close with him that you know well enough to ask them something like that?
I do not.
Yeah.
Again, put him through training, and I saw him when we were in second phase, so that's 8 weeks of sporadic interaction. Team 3, not in the same operational element. I've had him on the show one time. I went to his, where he was living in an apartment complex. I think it was in Dallas. That's his district, right, Dallas?
No, it's down in Houston.
Houston, same thing, basically.
That's very different.
Houston and Dallas are like this.
They're like 5 minutes apart.
One's a suburb of another one. That's my geography lesson for Texas today, everybody. Talked with him then. I did his show remotely one time a couple years ago. I do not know who's in his circle at all. That would actually be a fascinating study just for congressmen and senators writ large. Who is in their circle? I'd be curious about that one.
Yeah, I mean, especially with him, I would love to know what team guys are still in a text thread with him that could call or text him and be like, dude, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't know anybody.
You could, but he might be at a place where
that doesn't exist.
That it doesn't matter to him anymore.
Yeah.
I think we all might arrive at a place, depending on what tightens our screws or what position we think that we might end up in. I think it's possible that we would all get to a place where if you receive that message, you could lie to yourself and say, well, what do you know? Right? Like, I'm now this, and so, you know what I mean? I think everybody's probably susceptible to that.
Like, he's so far beyond the SEAL teams positionally that he just doesn't even care.
Yeah, what I'm doing now, and I'm not saying he's saying this, but I could see a world where somebody in politics or the office says, you know what I'm doing now, like, now I have a better understanding. Now I have influence at a global level instead of a tactical one. Like, I got it.
Like,
I don't need your feedback.
Beneath him.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that he's like that, but I think, what do people in power want? They want to stay in power. And if you're in power, you might end up convincing yourself of some stuff that isn't true.
Yeah. Along those same lines, there's been, a lot of kind of vet bro drama in the last couple of years of, people coming on podcasts. There's been, Tim Kennedy, Shrek, a host of...
Why does everybody call him Shrek?
I don't know. I mean, that's his nickname, I guess. But John McPhee.
Yeah.
But there's been, even within our community, there's been, here of late, there's been the Matt Bissonette and Rob O'Neill infighting about who's lying and who's telling what. Like,
they're not technically infighting. They basically both just publicly tell a different version of the same story.
Yeah. Well, I guess
You know what I mean? They're not actually going at each other directly.
Yeah, it's all passive aggressive. Do you have an opinion as to why in the last couple of years? My only, I guess, speculation would be that like there's been so little combat in the last 10 years that it's like for the people who have made a living off of only engaging in that space. Like how do you keep it relevant? I don't know. Like I don't know where all of this has come from in the last couple of years, because so much of it is nitpicking things that happened 20 years ago, and it's like, why now all of the sudden?
I think it's because what people pay attention to. If I think it could be as easy as that. You and I both host a show on the internet, right? And you get as a creator, you get access to back-end data points, metrics, measurements, right? Downloads, thumbs up, comments, what is engaging with people and what isn't. I think that it is easy if what matters the most to you is engagement, that you chase the things that are providing the most of that for you. And I am not saying that anybody is doing that. I'm just looking at this and trying to answer your question, why has there been more? Well, if that's what's getting paid attention to, it doesn't surprise me. Is it a good look? No, it's not a good look. And I also think, though, that people have to take ownership over their algorithm. You and I see a lot of this because we probably engage with a lot of that content. The vast majority of people don't see it. Your algorithm is comprised of things that you engage with. And it's easy to say that, like, oh, this is random. And it's like, I don't think it's random. You keep flipping on videos that are like this, so you're going to keep being fed things that engage you on the platform because the platform is monetizing your attention. That's the whole game that we're playing here. So I think it could be a little bit because, things have slowed down from a kinetic nature, but I think it's just more of people seeing perhaps what gets more engagement and going down that pathway.
Yeah. I mean, you had Tucker on your show.
Yeah, Brent Tucker. Came out
today,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I guess obviously I haven't listened to it yet. It came out this morning.
Thank you for the support. You're real nice. You're a real good friend.
Give me a minute.
I mean, why isn't it playing now? We'll just watch that.
Why is it not on the screen? Is there a takeaway? Like, how did that go? And did you guys?
It went great. I haven't paid him back yet for him putting me in a hot tub. I did. We opened with, and I just told him, like, one day I will have sweet, sweet revenge on you. But it's not today, so don't worry about it. Yeah. One of the things, he had just been sued by Rob for $25 million. It's a defamation lawsuit, and we talked about it. And there is a takeaway from that episode, and actually there is a takeaway from Dan and Shawn and all of these stories. And Tim, tell the fucking truth, and you will avoid almost all of this.
Yeah. Is there any, I guess, not premonitions, were there any things that came out of that episode that were surprising to you, or things that you didn't know?
No, as far as, Brent is very good coming from the command that he came from. I would say that they're a little bit more close hold and guarded about a lot of the things that go on there. I don't know if that's better or worse. It is what it is. So he's very good at navigating, being able to talk about what he wants to talk about and kind of threading the needle on that. And when it comes to the lawsuit, it's more, I think, a little bit a matter of we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. For people who don't know, and not that I have an immense amount of experience in lawsuits, there's a process in a lawsuit called discovery. And that is a blade that cuts in two different directions. They get to ask a lot of questions of you, and you might be responsible for providing them information that you may not want to. But guess what? You get to ask a lot of questions too, and you can subpoena people. You can depose people under oath, on video. And so, if you think that the answer to stuff, we'll use Dan as an example. If you think the answer to silencing somebody, and again, those are my words, not necessarily his, But if you think the answer is to silence somebody by threatening them with a lawsuit, you better have your ducks in a row and your ass better not stink after you wipe. Because the discovery process, you're going to have to answer some real hard questions yourself.
Is there any diplomatic immunity, lethal weapon-wise, from Fordan?
Krugerrands.
For Fordan in that regard? Like, does he have any protections?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I wonder if there are some, like, because I imagine that, that there's a line somewhere where, because it's information that was gleaned from...
Well, he couldn't share the information, obviously, if it was classified in nature, but I think he'd have to crack the books on the finances. I think if you listen to Dan's response, I think one of the things that Shawn might be incorrect about is that Shawn said that he was having Steve Aoki, he was paying him to play at his party. What it sounds like is they actually just bought tickets and went to a Steve Aoki concert. Like, that'll sort itself out. But those are the type of things that will flesh itself out in that process where you get to directly ask questions. So I think the finances, you might be able to, he probably could get an idea of net worth, and that, and then we start going back to math. We start going back to, what do you get paid? What are you worth now? Draw me this line for me. Like, how do you do these things?
Right. But I think it's one of those, there's what's wrong, what's right, and then there's what's legal kind of thing is that, like, even if you can say, dude, you crushed it with a 60-some% average, how did you do that? It's like,
I think he might have to answer questions, though. I mean, you might, depending on how much with a fine-tooth comb, I would start going back in timeline and be looking like, you can't tell me the exact information that you got in this briefing, but what briefings have you had along the way? And then I would start looking at information or briefings that had some level of proximity to it. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree. But to me, I guess, again, that's where it's like we all know OJ killed his wife, right? Or,
But if the glove doesn't fit,
but that
you must have quit.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like correlation, you can't
doesn't
prove causation. It's like, that looks like a duck, walks like a duck, but at the end of the day, like, if it's impossible to prove the information that you received in this briefing that influenced your trading decisions, which I think it would be, because you can't prove that information was disclosed then because it's protected.
The long tail on that cat might be it exposes it to the place where you're not going to get reelected.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily solve the overall problem, but it flushes a turd.
Yeah. Yeah. From the lawsuit standpoint with with Rob and the Brent podcast, that's obviously kind of a shitstorm, but it also seems a little bit symbolic in that $25 million. I'm assuming Brent doesn't have $25 million laying around. You have a helicopter, so clearly
people think helicopters cost millions of dollars. I'm telling you right now, it was in the six figures.
Yeah. But do you know what Rob's end goal is with that, or kind of?
I only know what he has said, and that was and he has said this publicly, is a statement essentially saying he's tired of the vet on vet attacks. From my understanding, he is trying to get people to leave his family alone because people have been approaching his family, and I believe that he said that any money that actually does come from it is going to be donated, which honestly is a little bit of a weird one for me, because in the lawsuit he's claiming loss of income and a drastic reduction in his ability to make money. But then if he does make money from the person that he claims has a heavy hand in that, he's going to be giving it away. Yeah. So that one to me was a little bit weird, but
yeah, maybe it's just a kind of a line in the sand of saying I'm not going to take any financial gain, even if it's because I can understand the optics of that.
Yeah.
By not doing it, it makes it look.
I don't think there is any benefit to. I hate the term vet bro, actually, because I don't really know what it means. Like, are you and I vet bros?
I think so.
Well, what does it mean?
Well, first we got to get some T-shirts made up.
What type?
Well, that's for a behind-the-scenes conversation.
Okay, that's more Patreon content. Understood.
To me, it
seems to be a pejorative term.
Yeah, to me, it's just guys who are veterans who are in the space of being public figures in that way.
So, is it positive or negative?
I think it can be either.
Who decides?
The public.
Interesting. Because what I have seen more than anything are veterans calling other veterans vet bros pejoratively.
Yeah.
Which, again, outside of the vernacular, and I said this on the episode with Brent, and I'll say it again. I can't think of anything. Well, I mean, I can think of things I care less about, but there are a few that I care less about than who killed Osama bin Laden. I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm glad that it happened. I don't care how many people shot him. I don't care how many times he was shot. I'm glad the dude's dead. When it comes to two different people telling a different version of the same story, and then I'll layer on top of that some of the episodes that came out around Shrek, the things that have come out around Tim. My concern in all of that, each of those people, can do what they want to with their experiences. Choices have consequences. Actions have consequences. If you're on the wrong side of the truth, it's going to catch up with you, especially in a world where the internet lives forever. That will sort itself out. But what I keep getting confronted with is a question from non-veterans, and it is increasing in volume and velocity. And that question is, how do I know who to trust? And I don't have a great answer for them. And all of this stuff that is happening online is directly eroding the trust and integrity of the veteran community. And I don't think that's a good thing.
I agree. And that leads me to ask, guys like you and I, or I'll just ask you specifically, I guess, what do you feel a level of, or if you do, what level of scrutiny do you think falls on our shoulders to vet guys and their stories? Is there none, or is there some? Is there some in between?
Man, that's tough, especially when you start talking about guests outside of the veteran world. Because I love talking with people who have no military background, and I don't know enough about almost every subject on earth to know whether or not in the moment somebody is snowballing me.
I guess specifically in the veteran space of having guys that, particularly in the special operations community, do you feel any sense of obligation?
I may not be able to vet their story in real time, but I feel like I am obligated if I host somebody and then I determine later on demonstrably that what they said is either inaccurate or untrue. I have an obligation to address that, and depending on the level, either make a modification or pull down. You know what I mean? Like I can only operate off of what I know, but if I learn something in the future about something that happened in the past, now I do know. I didn't know in the moment, so now I have that information. I need to do something with it.
Yeah, and in that case, have some sort of consequence of either making an addendum to that show or pulling it entirely or what have you.
I'll go, Shawn had Tim on, and an example of somebody acknowledging that perhaps what was said on the show had a tenuous relationship to the truth is he made an adjustment to the thumbnail and added into the description. Like some of the things that were said in here have been disputed and shown to be untrue.
Yeah.
Whether or not he pulls it down, that's totally his call. But he didn't know that in the moment. Other information came to light. He took action upon that. Yeah. Whether or not that was enough, I'll leave that for viewers or listeners to make the choice. But I mean, how could you and I, even because we're veterans, how could we vet every single person's story?
No, because I mean, we've both had guys on our show who have been accused of stretching the truth or embellishing or what have you. And similarly, it's like, well, I wasn't there. I mean, whether you take the bin Laden raid, I mean, we both know people who were there, who we trust what they say, and they may have differing perspectives as to what happened. Or even like the Chapman stuff with Roberts Ridge, it's like, I think we've both received criticism for not calling out the SEAL community. It's like, well, first of all, I didn't realize I was the spokesperson for the SEAL community. 2, I wasn't there. And 3, like, who am I to gatekeep, every single story that has anything to do with, any SEAL team member at any point.
And I've also never hosted Britt, but if I did,
I would ask him.
Yeah, I don't know if he would enjoy my line of questioning.
Yeah.
And for me, I have had the indication a few times in conversations, it actually hasn't been with vets, that somebody is snowballing me a little bit. And what I do is I ask more questions and I get them to talk more. And that's how I have been able to, I've never had an episode where I've had to take down or one where I haven't aired, but let people talk and ask them the questions and give them that rope. I think that's the best that I can do.
Yeah.
I will never host somebody that I know to be a demonstrable liar. Like, that's not going to happen. And I'll do the best that I can. And I will, once I have new information, I will take action on that. As an example, people kept hitting me up about Tim. And I finally, on a Friday episode, addressed them. Like, listen, this is the information that I was operating up to this point. I didn't read the book. You know, I look back and he was selective in the stories that he would tell around me or my wife. But now I have had so many different people, civilians, reaching out. What about this story, that story? I'm like, what? Hold on a second. Tell me that story again. And then bouncing those off of people that were there or who would know. I'm like, now I know. And this is what I think. Yeah. And I think that he lied.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was accidental. I mean, I don't know what else you want me to do. Do you want me to go on an anti-Tim campaign? Guess what? There's already people doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you kept track of the, I guess, escapade of events that have taken place since Charlie Kirk was shot?
I mean, that's a broad question. Which escapade are you talking about?
I guess any of them. I mean, in particular, Candace Owens and Erica Kirk. But I guess that as it by itself. But then also just the kind of the FBI lens that is telling the story of the investigation and what happened, what didn't happen. Like,
yeah.
Do you follow that enough to have an opinion that I don't trust the FBI? I think Cash Patel's full of shit. I mean, is there any of that swirling around in your mind?
Well, before I answer that, this situation is actually, to me, it reinforces what I think about people chasing engagement. How many people did you see that came from our backgrounds or peripheral backgrounds that started putting out the most bullshit information around that particular event?
Droves.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. 100%.
Because it grew listener base. It grew subscriptions. I'm sitting there watching veterans talk about the ricochet off of his body armor and how I'm like, dude, you can see his nipples. He's like, and then people, millions, you know what I mean? So why did they do that? They did that because that's what they were going for, was the engage. And I'm not here to judge that, but let's also not put lipstick on a pig. Do that if you want to, but don't lie to me about what it is that you're doing. That's how you want to grow your channel that way. But to me, I was a little bit shocked by the number of people that were putting out information that I would consider to be demonstrably false, and also for any level of critical thinking, false. And they were also rushing to make assumptions, which is something that we were taught not to do. You play the real world as it's presented to you, not what you want it to be. But if you're in a world of gathering attention and that snowball going downhill and getting bigger and virality and all this, like, I get it, but don't lie to me,
yeah.
Right? Now, when it comes to the FBI and Cash Patel, I don't know if we've ever had a more qualified director.
You too.
I don't know anything about the guy or the FBI, really.
Well, I guess from a broad spectrum, when you see, now that it's been a few months, and you see how, you know, the initial investigation, the capture of the suspect, and everything subsequently. The
biggest mistake they made was just flooding out every piece of information that they got. I know that we live in a world that people want answers instantaneously and simultaneously, but I think if they actually would have put out far less information, they probably would have been a little bit better off, as opposed to changing it along the way, you know? I have no idea whether or not they're doing a good investigation or whether or not Cash Patel is a good director. He does have legit crazy eyes. That man's mugshot, I'm like, are we clearing both corners at the same time here, buddy? Like,
one eye fishing, one eye cutting bait.
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you hear the stories like he wouldn't get off the jet until he had an assault vest or whatever. I'm like, please tell me that's not true. But then I can also see a world where it totally is. I don't know. I actually don't know if we will. I would say like 6 months is probably a reasonable expectation of time. Let the investigation finish itself up, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of jumping into the void and making things worse, like, let the investigation finish itself up, which is the antithesis of the world that we live in, where you want instant information all the time.
I agree. I mean, I know for me, I have my doubts as to whether or not it's being conducted in a manner with which everybody would endorse. Do
you think it was a sole shooter?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Not kind of. I would say I'm largely in the same boat in that, like, I don't know. I wasn't there. Like, are there some things about the story that we're being told that seem hard to believe? Yes. But all I know is what I've been told. Like, I'm not in these back rooms. I don't know what all that they have come across that they haven't told us.
Yep.
I mean, that's the one thing. Like, no matter how much information has been shared, that's still all that we know that's been shared. We don't know what hasn't been shared,
Yep.
And so I don't know. Like, it seems a little far-fetched, not impossible, but doesn't seem particularly probable. Mike was on here a week ago and was telling me, I think he's followed it maybe a little closer than you and I have, but that he's had some conversations with people in other branches of the U.S. government that have kind of opined that the FBI has been incredibly difficult to deal with and kind of giving them the Heisman at every turn when they're trying to help and cooperate and assist in the investigation, and basically been told to mind their own business.
I mean, I hope that's not true, but I mean, I can 100% see a world where it is.
Which, to the broader point, like, is there any part of the government that you feel is trustworthy and doing a good job?
The IRS.
Well, I think that about wraps it up.
I mean, the government, we say that, our government is corrupt. Well, the government is just like probably millions of people at this point, at least hundreds of thousands. I do think that there is a lot of corruption in the government, but does that mean that everybody that works for the government is corrupt? No, I don't think so. I mean, unfortunately, it seems like time after time after time, they take the steps that are eroding trust instead of building trust. And until that stops, I don't think they have any reasonable expectation that anybody should trust them, because they keep stepping on their dick.
Agreed. One of the things that it probably would have fit in better earlier when we were talking about foreign policy, but this is one thing that's real time taking place that I think is along those same lines, which is Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I'm a little baffled at the level of engagement that's taking place with Venezuela. Do you have a perspective on our involvement and whether or not there should be any?
I don't know whether or not I have a perspective on whether or not we should be involved. I'm curious where this moves the line to. These innocent fishermen who are in international waters on cigarette boats with 6 450 horsepower motors just trawling for tuna. People can't understand yet. I'm being very sarcastic. Let's assume that they are drug runners. And for people who think that the fisherman comment was legitimate, please just research what a fishing boat looks like versus a drug running boat. Where does this move the line? What if we see a vehicle convoy of more drugs than that in Mexico being driven north by the cartel? Did we strike there too? That's, to me, I worry about the incremental escalation of things like this. I am not an expert on legalities. I am going to assume, I think some of this has to do with the designation of being a terrorist organization, that opens up some more authorities, but I will assume from a legal perspective that the strikes that were authorized were legal, at least under the current designation. So let's move past that. Let's move past whether or not they were illegal. It puts us in the question of, should we? I don't know the answer to that. Do I lose sleep over people who are running drugs to the United States, having known and knowing quite a few people who have seen the real world impact of overdose and loss of family from those drugs? I don't. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but I don't lose sleep over those people. Do I think it's a good idea for our country to do kinetic strikes like that? I don't know. And again, I don't know where this moves the line to. And I'm worried that it moves it closer and closer and closer to a place that we can't come back from.
I also think there's a big component. There's been a lot of, I think, verbiage of, in particular, the president talking about regime change and Maduro's days are numbered. And it seems like there is a broader goal on behalf of the current administration to do more than just that.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about locking down the airspace. And I mean, you and I aren't in these rooms, right? So now I'm at a place where I only have access to the same information that everybody else sees. It's troubling.
Yeah.
I've heard those type of words said, that type of vernacular used. And it didn't work out that great for us in the long run.
Yeah. I do worry about it because the airspace in particular, I mean, that's textbook 101 before a ground offensive is locking that down and disabling all surface to air everything, and then an air campaign followed by boots on the ground in a country where I just don't think we have any business doing that.
Like I said, man, measure of last resort. I mean, I have dreams of, okay, for anybody who would want to make that happen, you have to select a family member that has to go in the first wave.
Yeah.
You know, not that any of this is reasonable, but I wish that these people had that level of thought process and buy-in. Like, hey, dude, you're on the first landing craft when we're going to storm Normandy. Sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
You know? And I think, again, back to Afghanistan and Iraq, if we don't put as much planning on how we get out as how we go in, like, we are doomed to fail and repeat history.
Agreed. I do wonder if there is a component of resources, in particular oil, but also financial. I know there's been some pretty curious connections between hedge fund managers putting money into components of the oil industry in Venezuela and wanting to protect that investment. Similarly with Argentina, there was a ton of capital investment from Wall Street into the Argentinian currency, and wanting to protect that investment is a big part of our financial bailout. I know those are two totally separate mechanisms of influence, but the end result is essentially the same. It's protecting your rich friends by having foreign involvement in economies and foreign policy, which that drives me nuts.
Yep.
Within the scope of government and their involvement in decision-making process, we've seen an increase in using National Guard troops. 2 of them were just shot, 1 of them died. What is your take on our president, or I guess our government, utilizing National Guard or military-like forces to help police civilian populations here in the United States?
I think it depends on the situation. The people point to LA quite a bit, and the reality is the National Guard there, they were tasked with surrounding federal buildings. They weren't even acting in a law enforcement capacity. They literally, the limits of their ability were to be perimeter security, and I think I'm going to use that word pretty lightly. It's basically presence and deterrence outside of federal buildings. Do they need to be there? I don't know. Is it a good optic? I don't know either. I tend to think probably not really, but that one I think is a different one than DC. And the reason that Trump is able to do what he's able to do with the National Guard is DC is it's because it's a District of Columbia, not a state. That's why he can't. I think he was trying to do it in Chicago, and I think a federal judge either reversed it or they just stopped because they knew it was going to happen. So they, instead of taking the loss, they just changed their mind. I work with an agency in the DC area. I'm going to leave it broad because it's just better to leave it broad. And I'm not there all the time, but that agency is peripheral to what was going on with the National Guard. And you're going to get 2 very different narratives from people who have had their life changed. And I mean that from a quality of life and ability to live their life in less fear, and then those who are looking at what is happening on social media or the news. Pretty resoundingly, what I heard from people in DC is that they were very happy to have the National Guard there because it was having an impact. People feeling more comfortable to be out and about in the city. And again, people hearing this, my experience, I'm an N of 1. So I'm not trying to make policy here. I'm just saying what I have. Go talk to some people in DC yourself, before you just believe everything that you see on the news. Now, having said that, does it put the National Guard troops in an interesting position? Yeah, it really does. They're handcuffed a little bit. Some of them have guns, some of them don't. What do you think the odds are they were able to have a round in the chamber?
0.
100%. I would agree the same thing, 0. Forced to wear vests. You think they had plates in? I don't think so either. So why wear the vest, right? It's just a visual thing. So if they're going to do the job, let them do the job, but let's just deploy them like what they are, a scalpel, not a multi-tool. And I think that's where you try to use one in an interchange with the other. That's where it gets super messy. And the optics of all of these things, whether it's LA or DC, they've become completely politically weaponized. I don't even think they're attached to reality anymore. So, you talk to locals in DC, they're not pissed about it. Do they want it to be forever? No. Are they appreciating the difference while it exists? Yeah. Are we putting people into a position that could be more dangerous and not necessarily have the tools or authorities to protect themselves? Probably. Is that awesome? No.
So from a broad spectrum, I know it's case-by-case basis, but there are instances where you think it's okay or you would endorse the use of American
in a policing
military.
action, it'd have to be a case by case. That would need to be the National Guard, not the military, because at least the National Guard, can operate with the law enforcement without violating, posse comitatus. And again, National Guard for disaster, like all those things, like those are amazing. Like 100%, that should be a no-brainer whatsoever. But if you go outside of those traditional roles, I think we need to move slowly and think through the utilization of these things.
Yeah. From my perspective, the biggest kind of no-go criteria, or no-go rather, would be whether or not that area is asking for it. To me, if they're asking for it, it seems like a no-brainer. Yes, we'll help. But if they're saying, no, we don't want them there, that's where I think my biggest issue, Chicago being an example, like, do I think it would help? Yes. But if the mayor and the governor and, the powers that be in that area are saying, we do not want you here, I don't think you send them.
Well, then you have the issue of what if those people are saying that because honestly they are politically on the other side of the spectrum and they would rather see their city burn down than align with the current sitting administration.
To me, as much as that sucks, I view that similarly to us getting involved in civil wars in other parts of the world, is that then that's your city's responsibility to remove those fucking people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
You guys voted them in, so let that be a lesson, a shitty one. But I think there has to be some level of responsibility put on the people who are putting those people in those positions election after election.
Yeah. And again, this speaks to D.C. Trump can order that because of it being the District of Columbia. It actually does fall into, I think, essentially what you just said when it comes to those other cities.
Yeah.
They have the sovereignty to make that choice.
On the transverse of that, we see a lot of National Guard troops being used overseas in a clear military capacity. I think yesterday, 3 Americans, 2 National Guard troops were killed in Syria. Do you take that same approach in that we should utilize active duty military for those roles and not send National Guardsmen to those types of environments?
By design, the National Guard may be used for those type of roles. That's on the, you got to read the fine print. And it's not, the National Guard is not the military light. You know what I mean? If Iraq and Afghanistan showed us anything, it shows you right there that we have a finite amount of people, resources, and the ability to push people to that limit before they break. There were a lot of National Guard soldiers that were in both of those theaters of war. So I think you should probably, depending on the situation, but again, currency, competency, where they're at in their training cycle, proximity, deployability, like all of those things have to come into the decision. Would I generally select a active duty force over a National Guard force for something like that? Probably, but I don't even know what was going on in Syria, to be honest with you. So, or why they were there, what they were deployed for, how long they had been there, what role that they were serving. But again, it's not the military light,
Yeah, to me, I understand, the augment capacity, especially at the time, in Iraq and Afghanistan, where the numbers of troops there were significant. At this point, I don't understand why we would send National Guard troops to Syria when we don't have hundreds of thousands of troops in other theaters of operation.
Yeah, I would like to see the decision matrix on that as well. And like I said, I would probably default to active, but I also don't know specifically what they were doing there and why.
Yeah. Some members of Congress have urged service members to refuse what they consider illegal orders. Have you seen some of those video clips? Do you think that an action like that should warrant removal from Congress, or would you catalog that as free speech as a congressman?
It's a couple things. It is free speech, and it's also not accidental that 6 of them made the exact same message with the exact same wording in the exact same way. I think you'd be insulting people's intelligence if you said that that was random or accidental, that it wasn't politically motivated. And at the same time, they can kind of say whatever it is they want to say. It's like me telling you, Mike, don't drink mercury.
But I want to drink it.
How much?
All of it.
None is the answer. Don't have any. It's idiotic because how many times, I mean, you understand the UCMJ. It says directly in the UCMJ that you don't need to follow an order that is illegal. So don't try to like blow my hair back and say this is anything other than a political stunt. Does it rise to the level that you need to be sedition or being removed? First off, I don't know what sedition means. But does it rise to the level of needing to be removed from Congress? I mean, I don't know. I think it's stupid. I think it's political theater.
Yeah.
I think, again, it was done for engagement. It's political theater on social media.
It seems as though like that's such a huge part of everyday life now.
That's where everybody lives.
I mean, but would you consider entertaining a social media ban of any kind for sitting congressmen and above?
Ooh. Man, they're going to argue that limits their ability to
Communicate with
their constituents. Social media ban. I don't know if I would say ban, but maybe we put some guidelines in place. You know?
Yeah. Any particular guideline?
Don't be an asshole.
Well, that's a ban then. Sounds like a ban to me.
Well, actually, here's the thing. Do you want to... I mean, here's my theory on bad ideas. Don't hide them. Put them out in the light, because that's what bad ideas hate. It's like detergent for bad ideas. It's the same thing. People, we need to make sure that white supremacists don't have access to these platforms. And I'm not saying I want white supremacist messages spread by any stretch, but I want to know where these idiots are. Mm-hmm. And if you take them and ban them off everything, it's not that they're going to stop communicating. They're going to start communicating and meeting and coordinating shit in places that we don't have access to. So honestly, like maybe banning it is the wrong idea. If you want to be an idiot for everybody to see, good, because that'll have consequences, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, that's the catch, hopefully, is that it doesn't seem like it does. It turns into so much of our society and population are so TikTok oriented that it just turns into that, is that so many congressional members and above are engaging on these platforms like 16-year-old girls in high school. And to me, it's crazy that it's come to that.
I don't think it'll stay there, though. I do think that the pendulum will swing the other direction.
I hope so. I mean, would you put banning trading in Congress in that same category? Is there any worry of limiting rights of congressional members by doing so?
Trading is not a right. It's a privilege.
I mean, so would you put that in the same category, though, or no?
I mean, so there's arguments that have been made about the First Amendment right to express yourself on a social media platform. The protected speech is one thing. Trading, I think, is a completely separate issue.
So I guess with the free speech aspect of
trading's not free speech, though.
No, I'm saying we can say, hey, that's pretty black and white, right? The trading thing it's not a right. So
I don't think you can ban them. I mean, you could put restrictions in, but again, I want to see people's bad ideas.
Yeah, I'm not discounting that. I guess where I sometimes think it's a bit of a gray area on social media in particular is that, by saying as a sitting representative, you can't engage in this platform, mm-hmm. They're private businesses, right? Like, it's not saying you can't say these things. It's saying you can't use this as a platform to do it. Does that skirt or, I guess, alleviate the trampling of the First Amendment? Even if I know you're saying you want to hear them, but
I don't know the answer. I don't know where the balance of the legality lands on that one.
Yeah. Is there a hotbed topic that I haven't broached that is front of mind for you that you give a shit about?
We haven't talked about all the types of milk you can put in coffee. How do you milk an oat or an almond? I know you can milk anything with nipples, but
I got nipples, Greg.
No, I don't know. Here's the thing when it comes to, I didn't see any of the, I didn't directly see any of the 6, were they congressmen or senators? Were they senators?
I think they were congressmen.
Either way, one of the elected officials. I didn't see a single one of those except for reposts. We have a hand in shutting down this BS as the people on the receiving end of this. Stop engaging with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think people will, though.
I think we're going to get to, I say this based off of my own children. My middle son being the best example. He doesn't pay too much attention to social media. He's 20. He just downloads the apps when he wants to use them for a little bit and then deletes them.
That's pretty rare, I think.
It's gaining.
Really?
Yeah. It's gaining. And I think if Australia, that just implemented a social media ban, which I'll be curious how they get around VPNs, I think the more people and places that have that experience and see the real world impact, and I can only imagine that it's going to be positive in their life by banning, I think it's going to catch fire.
Yeah. I mean, it's because you brought up the Australia thing, and that's pretty front of mind as being a very recent, shooting that has...
It's like 2 days ago, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it has, significant implications in a number of ways. I guess first and foremost, I've seen a lot of people come on saying, like, I told you so. Like, by allowing, droves of migrants, from other parts of the world that have no interest or desire to assimilate, that are very anti, pick a religion.
Yeah.
That you asked for it. We tried to warn you, and you didn't condemn the celebrations of October 6th and blah, blah, blah. Like, if you put yourself in the position of running a government and that is a problem, how would you go about actually trying to fix that problem?
I think you have to assimilate into the country or society that you want to immigrate into.
But how do you force that, though?
That is a good question. But I think we can see what happens when you don't.
Yeah.
And I'm not by any means trying to say we have to mold people into exactly what they want them to be, but I mean, if they want to leave a country and come to another country and just create what it is that they left in the country that they're coming to, what do we got going on here? I want people who live in America to be proud to be an American, whatever that may mean to them. And I know that people can come from all over and all of those things, and I'm not saying they have to leave everything at the door when they come in, but if your only goal is to come to America to create the society that you were leaving because for whatever reason you found the United States to be a better expression, then I guess I take issue with that. What I'm willing to do with that, I don't know the answer or solution to that, but I think there are examples in the world. UK seems to be having a little bit of a crisis building with this. Canada has a little bit of this issue as well, too.
I would say Germany and the Scandinavian countries also.
Sure. Inside of the U.S., you could look at the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. There's a very large Somali population there. I'm not throwing shade at Somalis by any stretch, but there's news articles that you can easily access from local publishers talking about how Somali culture is pushing American culture to the side. And some of those, I guess, enclaves would be the word. I'm not trying to use that word negatively. I think you have to ask yourself, at what cost? I don't have the answer or solution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Like, to me, it seems pretty obvious and blatant that it's a bad idea, and it has not gone well.
But then also, how do you force them? Because you know what I mean. Like, I'm not that type of guy either. You know.
Well, I think from my point of view, it starts by being far more selective in terms of who you allow and why you're allowing them. I think like that's a good starting point, is saying like, wait a minute, refugee status from where? Like the whole contiguous, go to wherever it's the closest to you that's not forcing you to flee where you live and figure it out there. Like, you don't need to travel 4,000 miles to escape,
Or if you do, clear I would love to believe that we can set the expectations and boundaries of what, if you are coming from another country, this is what we expect of you in this country. If you don't want to live under that set of expectations, then this isn't a viable option for you.
Do you think something as simple as saying, like, here's kind of that guideline, right? Here are our expectations, and something as simple as, you know, if you're, I don't know if protesting is a good metric or not, but pick a thing where if you get caught engaging in that you're immediately deported, no questions asked, is a good consequence?
I mean, I think it depends, right? So protesting, by definition, is protected by the First Amendment, right? Now, people get up in arms about students being deported for protesting or threatened for that. There's a difference between being a citizen and being here on a visa. And specifically, when it comes to the visa applications, it talks about things like protesting. So it's not as if the precedent for this has not been set in other areas.
So same with refugee status. I mean, would you put that in the same category as student visa? Because you're not an American citizen. So
I mean, I've thought about this now for about 3 seconds, so I don't know if that's a good idea or not. But I think that there's a reason why probably those here on a visa have a slightly different expression of rights than those here as a citizen. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. You're a visitor. You know, if I went into somebody else's house and shit in their kitchen, I would kind of expect to be asked to leave.
Depends on the house.
True. And how they like to party. Yeah. But is there a glass table involved? I don't know. But
I hope so.
You know what I mean? I think that it doesn't have, people look for light switch solutions, black and white. I think a lot of this stuff is very nuanced conversation that we need to have.
Yeah. It seems like nobody's willing to have it because there's...
Why though? Like, are they worried about offending? Like, you might, and here's the thing, in having these real-time conversations, I might look back and be like, man, I shouldn't have said that because, but the reality is I don't mind saying because I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Not every thought I have is fully formed. And sometimes for me, I verbalize stuff. So when you ask me some of these questions, I'm like, all right, I don't know, let's talk our way through this. This doesn't mean that I am going to bleed to death on every idea that I have. I need to get it out to work myself around to what I think and what I actually believe.
And even then, 2 months from now, it can change.
Totally.
Right? Yeah, I agree. Any other hotbed topics?
No, we covered the milk thing. That's a burner.
Do you put milk in your coffee?
I do, mostly just because it pisses Evan off. Every time I'm with him, I'll make him a coffee, like, do you want some cream? And he's always like, fuck you, man.
What is the white stuff of choice for you?
2%.
That's what you use?
Yeah.
I go full heavy cream.
I mean, listen, if you like to have things coating your teeth, you do that.
I like things coated.
I'm sure you do.
About. We'll talk later. Well, Matt, we've got a number of Patreon questions, and I want to talk also about bikes, cars, rigs, et cetera, which all is going to be, that's all going to be on Patreon.
Okay.
But before we do that, I'll just wrap up the formal interview quick. Drownproof, Andy, I can't thank you enough for coming and spending your time with us. It's been a while, and I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. And
yeah, we'll do it again in another 8 years.
Perfect. Yeah. Be right down the road. Yeah. Anything for me before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate it, man. It's cool to sit down with somebody else who does this as well, who probably never thought that they were going to, and just, it's nice being a host of your own show because you can kind of like pick the direction you want to go in your guest, but also it's also refreshing to sometimes just be a guest as well too.
Yeah, agreed. I can't thank you enough. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
To the viewer/listener, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.